I'd like to start off with welcoming everybody here tonight and start off with the pledge, please. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We just have a little bit of things to do in the beginning, and then we will go right into the bridge report, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Can you talk louder? Yeah.
Yes, I have a teacher voice.
You can talk louder.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
We'll adopt the agenda and we'll do the minutes, and then I'll turn over to Paul and we will go over the bridge, and then we'll open up for questions and stuff right after that. Okay. So a motion for adopt the agenda for tonight?
Yes, I'd like to do that. Adopt it, please.
All those in favor?
I'll second the motion.
All second motion? Oh, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll do that with this. Okay. Adoption of the minutes for May 22nd.
Make a motion to adopt the minutes, May 22nd.
Seconded.
Second that.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, minutes adopted. I am Cheryl Poirier. I am subbing in for, Jeff King, who's having soldier surgery as we speak today. He had it, so please bear with me if I don't know the correct protocol. I'm working on it, so I'm doing it.
Okay, so the first item on our agenda is the state of Vermont and the engineering firm of VHB giving an alternative presentation on the South Street Grove Street Bridge. Those engineers are joining us via Zoom. So Jason and Bob, and I think Aaron, I saw you're in there as well. You have the floor.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Kleinfelter. I'm a project manager in the structures section of the Vermont Agency of Transportation. Is it coming through okay, Paul?
It is, but they're telling me they can't hear you, and this is not my computer, so. Can you turn this thing up? No, yeah. One thing that they didn't show me how to do is turn it up. I don't see it.
I vote no.
Can you speak up, Bob? I can't find how to turn this computer up.
You have some front row seats if you'd like to. There are some front row seats.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to speak loudly. Is that a little better?
Yeah, I'm at 100%. So
We're in a big area. So.
Okay. Like I said, yeah, I'm Bob Kleinfelter with the Vermont Agency of Transportation Structures section, and we're here to talk about bridge number 4 on Grove Street. And with me tonight, I have I'll start with the other VTrans member here, Kyle Obenauer. He's the archaeological or architectural historian with our environmental section. So Kyle is involved in the historic aspects of this project. And we'll get into it later with this presentation, but this is a historic bridge, as many of you know. And also with me tonight, I have VHB. They're our design consultant for this project and prepared the scoping report that we've been working on over the last several months. And we're here to go over tonight. So I'll let VHB take it over from here.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Yeah. Hi, my name is Jason Keener, everyone. Like Bob said, I work for VHB. We're the design consultant on this project. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the alternatives and scoping for the bridge. Paul, do you know if I'm able to share my screen?
you should be able to.
I'm still having trouble. It says it's disabled.
I cleared you to share.
Do you have the presentation that I sent earlier? Could you pull it up, maybe?
Usually you have to hit the little arrow up button and say share front, like most people share.
Right here, right?
Yeah, go up. There, click out of that thing.
That's what pops up when I hit that.
Yeah, and then hit the little arrow down there. Got the other one to the right.
Okay. I'm not an IT guy, everybody, so.
You're great.
Mhm.
Go up. That one. And then multiple participants can share. There you go. Then he should share. Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are looking for a part-time job.
Perfect. Let me see. All right, how's that? Can everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So, I guess just to get right into it, thanks for having me come. I'm here tonight to give you an idea of what we've prepared for the alternatives on the bridge. I'm going to start here by giving you a brief overview about what we'll be talking about this evening, and our approach to the project. Yeah, so as this is a VTrans project, we'll be following the VTrans project development process. So I'm going to start by giving you some info on what that process looks like itself. And then we'll dig into the project itself and provide some information on the existing additions of the bridge on the site, provide some information on the alternatives that we're recommending, and discuss some of the other alternatives that were considered. And part of that discussion will be going over the alternatives that we consider for maintaining traffic during construction. After I go over the recommendation and the alternatives, I'll also touch on the conceptual project schedule and the next steps in the process. And then at the end, we'll definitely provide an opportunity to ask questions, but I'm going to recommend that we kind of just hold the questions to the end just so we can get through the presentation in a timely fashion and not get hung up or anything. So. And for clarity, just to start, prevent any confusion, make sure we're all talking about the same bridge. Start out by showing this map. I'd imagine most folks are familiar with the bridge, but bridge number 4 is the Steel Truss Bridge that's located on Grove Street at its crossing of the Poultney River, just south of the intersections of Main Street and Furnace Street. Now into the VTrans project development process. There's many steps in the project development process, but to summarize it down into 3 main phases. Those are best to kind of define as the project definition phase, the project design phase, and then of course the construction phase. The VTrans project development process formally begins once a project has been not only identified but funded, and then the project starts with the definition phase. So that's the phase we're currently in with this project. And in this phase, the project team performs surveys and investigations to identify what the resources are and the constraints surrounding the project. And then with those resources and constraints in mind, alternatives are developed and evaluated, and the project team engages the public to get local and regional input. Tonight's meeting is kind of an example of that, where we're engaging and reaching out to get input. Another example some of you may have seen would be the community questionnaire. And generally, the outcome of the project definition phase is to build a consensus among the project stakeholders on what the preferred alternative to move forward with is. Once that preferred alternative has been identified and agreed to, the project moves into the design phase. In the design phase, the project's taken from kind of the conceptual alternative into the actual design. The project limits are defined. The impacts of the project are quantified so that we can get permits and easements for the rights of way that. And then also in this phase, any structural or technical calculations are completed, and the contract documents that are used to build the project are developed. And then following the design phase is, of course, the construction phase when the project gets built. VTrans will use the plans and specifications that are developed in that project design phase to advertise the project, and it will then be awarded to a contractor who builds the project accordingly. that was an overview on the process, and now we'll get into some of the details for this project. But before we get too far into the presentation, I did want to kind of provide a little information on some of the terms we'll be using tonight surrounding a bridge. I'm guessing not everyone here is a bridge engineer, so hopefully this can get us somewhat on the same page. A couple of general terms you'll see and hear us use tonight are superstructure and substructure. The superstructure is what you might think of as the bridge itself. In our case, it's the steel truss. The substructure is the foundation or what supports the bridge. Most often it's concrete abutments and wing walls. Some additional terms relating to the superstructure are the top chord, kind of that top element that's highlighted in blue. The bottom chord, the other blue line at the bottom of the truss. The top and bottom chords are really the main load carrying components of the truss. They do the bulk of the work. Connecting the top and the bottom chords are the vertical and diagonal members. These are shown as the yellow and green highlighted members in this figure. And these four types of members, the verticals, diagonals, top and bottom chord, make up one truss. And in our case here, we have two trusses which make up the entire bridge. There's one truss on each side of the roadway. Between those two trusses, there's various other members. The two members you'll probably hear us mention most tonight are the floor beams and the stringers. On the bottom, the floor beam is kind of the dull gold line it spans between the two trusses, and then the stringers are represented by the red lines at the end, and they span between the floor beams. And the combination of these make up the floor system of the bridge, and they support the deck and the driving surface. Some of the other components on the substructure are the wing walls, which come off to the side and support the roadway and soil behind the bridge, the footing, which supports the entire structure itself, and the stem, which is the main wall of the abutment. And then kind of where the bridge sits is called the bridge seat, which is fairly evident. And probably the last term I haven't mentioned here on the slide is the bearings. The bearings provide a connection between the bridge and the abutments, and they kind of play a critical role in allowing the bridge to function as it should. Okay, now to talk some about bridge number 4, provide some information on that. Grove Street is what carries bridge number 4, is what bridge number 4 carries. It's what Vermont classifies as a major collector road. It's a class 1 town highway. The bridge itself is a 126-foot span steel through truss, and based on its design and configuration, it's what's known as a Pratt truss. The bridge was originally constructed in 1923. It's owned by the town of Poultney. In 1975, it was reconstructed, and some repairs were made to the concrete deck, floor beams, and stringers that are out there. And then most recently, in 2021, the bridge was closed due to the issues with the bottom chord and stringers that the V-Trans bridge inspection team found during their inspection. And as a result, the emergency repairs were made to reopen the bridge. One of the most significant features of this bridge that Bob alluded to earlier is that it's historic in nature. Being that the bridge was constructed in 1923, before the flooding of 1927, it makes it one of the few remaining steel trusses that was constructed before 1927. And as such, it's been noted as a valuable resource for Poultney and the state of Vermont. And the bridge is listed in the National Register of Historic Sites and in the Vermont Metal Trust Bridge Plans. It's registered as a Category A, meaning that it should be preserved for highway use. And this significance was recognized by V-Trans and the Vermont Department of Historic Preservation in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that was when they reached out to the town of Poultney, and in 2001, V-Trans and the town of Poultney agreed on a historic bridge preservation easement agreement. And this enrolled a bridge in the Vermont Historic Program. Some of the highlights of this agreement and easement are that the town committed to continue the use of the bridge for highway use, and to keep the bridge in service as a roadway bridge, and functional. The V-Trans portion of this agreement was that they agreed to be responsible for all the rehabilitation and restoration costs. So as you can imagine, this easement and these agreements become significant today as we're considering what to do with the bridge. Some more information and notes on the bridge here. The existing bridge layout, kind of left to right, provides for 10-foot wide travel lanes with 9-inch shoulders. For a major collector road that I mentioned earlier, the minimum standard for these shoulders should be 3 feet. So the bridge is a little narrow. The bridge railing that's currently out there is a W-beam guardrail, which is mounted to the vertical and diagonals of the truss. And while this functions, this type of bridge rail hasn't been crash tested and doesn't meet any type of really design standard. The V-Trans inspection team has given the bridge deck a rating of 5, and that's according to the National Bridge Inspection Standards. And that 5 equates to what they call a fair condition. It is noted to have areas where the concrete is delaminating and spalling on the deck. The substructure, the abutments have also been given a rating of 5. The abutments that are there today actually consist of stone abutments that have a concrete facing on them. And that's what's seen and visible. And the concrete portion of those abutments are supported by timber piles below the concrete. And those visible concrete portions also have notable spalls and cracks in both the abutments and the walls. Bridge ratings of 5 themselves typically wouldn't call for a rehab or replacement for a bridge. However, for bridge number 4 here, the driving factor for this project is the condition of the superstructure. The superstructure has been given a rating of 3, or being in serious condition. The top cords of the trusses and the upper elements of the bridge are in generally good condition. However, the lower portions of the bridge and the bottom cords, floor beams, stringers, and the bottoms of those verticals and diagonals have significant holes and deteriorations. One of the greatest enemies of a bridge and steel in general is salt, so particularly water and salt. And that's why you're seeing those deteriorations on the lower elements, and while the upper elements remain in good condition. Here we've included a few photos to show the condition of the different bridge elements. On the left, you can see the underside of the concrete deck and sidewalk. And then the photo on the right shows the top of the concrete deck with some spalls and cracking. Here's some photos of the steel truss elements. The photo on the top left is of those upper elements I mentioned. These elements of the truss, like I said, are in good condition. You see some surface rust in the steel. Could stand to be repainted, but otherwise there's really no loss of strength. They're as strong as they were the day they were built. However, the other photos below that and on the right show the floor beams and stringers, which are below the roadway. And you see these have holes and deteriorations just from being exposed to those salts. These conditions are fairly typical throughout the bridge. The lower elements were exposed to those, and the upper elements, which don't see those salts and stuff, are in good condition. Here's some more photos, some of the bridge abutments. As I noted before, the abutments actually consist of stone, concrete, and timber, which is shown on the left here in a clip from the original branch plans. The stone was actually used for the previous cover bridge that was on this location. And then when that bridge was removed, the stone abutments were left in place. Timber piles were installed around the perimeter of those, and a concrete facing along with the bridge seat and back walls were poured to support the new truss and the roadway. As you can see on the photos on the right, however, the concrete portions that are visible show signs of deterioration and spalling, cracking. I would say that the abutments have done pretty well to support the bridge for the past 100 years, but they are reaching the end of their useful life, probably. So kind of discussed the condition of the bridge and the importance of that, but the project doesn't impact just the bridge itself. It will also impact the surrounding area. So part of the project definition phase is also the investigation of other cultural and natural resources, such as wetlands, archaeological sensitive areas, wildlife habitat, historic resources in the surrounding area. And these have been recorded so that those impacts can be documented and evaluated during that design phase of the project. Here's a plan sheet showing those resources. These are the resources that the project team has identified and that we documented. The pink areas on the top of the screen downstream of the bridge are wetlands. And with those, there's a 50-foot buffer surrounding them. The Poultney River is shown in blue, and the orange lines depict the limits of the archaeological sensitive areas. As these have been identified as being archaeological sensitive, further investigation will be completed throughout the summer or this season to find out if there's any artifacts or significance there. Overall impacts to all these resources are expected to be minimal. We do expect to be able to stay out of the wetlands, work around the river. That work will be relatively minor, and at the banks, we're not going in the actual channel. The areas surrounding the bridge and abutments have also been previously disturbed, which reduces the likelihood of those historic artifacts. Another resource that's shown here but not really highlighted are the impacts of the surrounding properties. As with other resources, these are impacts that we try to minimize as we develop the project, and we do that by communicating with property owners to understand their concerns and do what we can to stay off their property. Okay, having discussed the condition of the bridge and surrounding area, I'm now just going to go through our recommended alternative and the work that's being proposed. In short, we're recommending rehabilitating the truss to preserve that historic resource and to replace the abutments that support the truss. And then while this work is being completed, to maintain traffic by using a temporary bridge. So what this really will consist of is essentially all members below mid-height of the truss are to be replaced. This includes those existing floor beams, stringers, and the lower portions of the truss verticals and diagonals. Any of the remaining steel that's not going to be replaced would be cleaned and repainted. And then a new concrete deck will be placed on the bridge once it has been rehabbed. The deck will include the sidewalk on the west side of the bridge as well. The bridge railing will be upgraded to be a box beam with curb system that's both mounted to the truss and would utilize posts mounted to the deck as well. And this type of system will provide the greatest travel lane width as possible, and the curb will direct all the drainage off the bridge as opposed to the drainage now, which just dumps off the deck and onto those bottom cord members. For the substructures, the abutments of the bridge, in order to better align the bridge and the abutments with the channel, and also to ensure the abutments can provide the desired lifespan of the bridge, we're proposing to replace the abutments. The replaced abutments will be located to the south of where they currently are located, and they'll be supported by driven steel piles to prevent any scour from the river. Here's a section view of the bridge. The steel members highlighted in gray are the ones that we're calling for to be replaced. And the steel members above those not highlighted would be cleaned and repainted. As you can note, the lower members of the bridge will be replaced at about mid-height of the bridge, which is, we're trying to aim for about mid-height of the bridge above the splash zone from plows and traffic to keep it, anything that's been touched by salt would be replaced. The layout of the bridge and placement of the railing will increase the shoulder width some. It's going to be increased to 10 inches on the shoulders. It's not much of an improvement, but given the limitations of the bridge, we're taking what we can get. And then, as I noted on the last slide, you can see here the bridge railing, which would be the box beam railing with curb. And again, that's expected to be a much more rigid system than the current railing. W-beam is not known to be rigid. Here's another three-dimensional view of the rehab of the steel members. This is a snip out of the structural model we built for the bridge. The members highlighted in red are all the ones to be replaced. And we did want to note that after this work, the result will be a fully functional bridge that's capable of carrying all Vermont legal highway loads. Looking at a layout of the proposed work, you can see the existing abutments, which we've highlighted in orange. And then, as you can note, the new abutments and bridge will be located to the south of where those abutments are currently located. You can see that the southern abutment will be pushed away from the channel to better align it with the river corridor. And one of the other key factors in replacing the bridges is is to provide a substructure where they expect the design life that matches the superstructure. Rehabbing the truss would be a great improvement for the bridge, but if you ignore the substructure, you could result in additional work needing to be done in the next 10 to 15 years, for example, to replace those as well. So while the truss is removed and taken out of service, there's an opportunity here to replace those and put the bridge on substructures that will last as long as the truss. Another element of the project I haven't mentioned yet, but you can see here, is that a sidewalk would be installed on the western side of the southern approach. Currently, the sidewalk that goes across the bridge does not connect to anything on that southern end. And so the plan would be to install the sidewalk in this location and run it at least to the end of the guardrail. Then talk about running it to that first drive. So as part of the alternative that we're recommending here, a temporary bridge would be installed to maintain traffic during construction. Most likely this would be on the downstream or the western side of the bridge, as that eastern side has much less room to fit the temporary bridge in. The bridge would be a one-lane temporary bridge, and it would have a sidewalk similar to what's being shown here. That's the sidewalk separated from traffic by a concrete barrier all on one bridge. Here's a layout view of what that temporary bridge and roadway layout could conceptually look like. The layout will be developed to balance those impacts to the properties, surrounding properties, and the resources with the need to accommodate traffic and allow trucks to access that bridge and make the turns as needed. This would be an alternating one-way traffic system, and they'd be controlled by a signal on each end of that bridge. So the recommended alternative was largely driven by that historic bridge preservation easement agreement that's in place between the town and the state. Other alternatives that we did consider but were dismissed as they either didn't meet the project needs or were inconsistent with the easement. These alternatives that were considered were first and foremost no action. Part of every alternatives analysis is a consideration of not taking action. In this case, it could be an option, but given the condition of the bridge, it would likely result in posting of the bridge and restricting the weight. And at some point, within a not too distant future, the bridge would likely need to be closed. So simply, this did not meet the needs of the project, so was dismissed. Alternative one is the alternative for rehabilitation of the truss, which, as we've covered, is the recommended alternative. This alternative did consider two sub-alternatives regarding the substructure. The first would be to repair the substructures, and the second, which is what we're proposing and recommending, is to replace the substructures. And kind of as I covered before, the recommended alternative is to replace and provide a foundation that matches the lifespan of the bridge and the repairs that are being made. One thing to note with alternative one, where the truss is being rehabbed, is that this is fully funded by the state at no cost to the town. These other alternatives that were considered would not be that way. The town would have a share in the costs. The second alternative that was considered, alternative two, was for a full bridge replacement on the current alignment. So essentially to remove the existing bridge that's there and to replace it with a new bridge in more or less the same location. So while this alternative was considered, it was dismissed again because it was inconsistent with a historic bridge preservation easement agreement and the adverse effects of that would be associated by removing the truss. And then lastly, the alternative three for a full bridge replacement off alignment. This alternative is similar to alternative two, where the existing bridge would be removed. However, it would consider using a new bridge in a different location from where it is now. It would be either just upstream or just downstream from the existing bridge. And again, similar to alternative two, it was dismissed because it was inconsistent with the agreement and would have adverse effects. Another element of the alternatives that we consider for the project is maintenance of traffic. large or small. One of the challenges with almost all transportation related construction projects is what to do with traffic while the work is being done. Generally speaking, the options for dealing with traffic and maintaining it are to either close the road and bridge and detour the traffic around the site, or to use a temporary bridge, as we've discussed here. So for this project, it was pretty clear that using a temporary bridge was the best fit and preferred by the community. Closing the bridge and the roadway was considered, and in this case, the detour would be signed and maintained by VTrans, as it is a Class 1 roadway. The three options that were looked at are shown here. The option in green, which uses 22A through both Vermont and New York, was a 19-mile detour. The option in red, which uses Vermont Route 31, 149, and Route 30. And that was a 19.5-mile detour. And the option in blue, which again uses Vermont 31 and then New Boston Road, Crossroad, and then back on the 22A, was just over a 9-mile detour. While this was the shortest detour at just over 9 miles, this New Boston Crossroad detour will not be able to be signed, just as it's not capable of being maintained and taking the truck traffic that it would see. So, and the other, I guess I should say, sorry, the recommended alternative, which calls for the temporary bridge rather than a detour, was really driven by the length and time of these detours. Each detour of the 19 miles or so would be expected to take 25 to 30 minutes for somebody to drive around. And the duration that these would be in place would be over multiple construction seasons. So really wasn't realistic. So the presentation wouldn't be complete without talking about a few of the important details related to any construction project, such as when and how much. We are still very much in the definition phase of the project, but we do have the conceptual schedule and the conceptual costs associated with the project to share. We plan to wrap up this definition of the project soon, here in the next month or so of 2023. And then we can move into the design phase of the project, which will take place through 2023 and 2024. And then ideally, if all the contract documents are in order and all the funding is in place, the project will go out to bid in late 2024 or the first part of 2025, and then construction could begin in the 2025 season. And then, as I noted before, with the maintenance of traffic, construction is anticipated to last multiple seasons. And so as we go into that design phase, that would be better defined of what that schedule looks like. At this point, the total conceptual project estimate is $7.5 million. And this is for the entire project. It includes all the permitting, engineering, both during design and construction, the project management costs, and of course, those actual construction costs. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned this already, but the town's portion for this work would be zero with a recommended alternative. And normally for a project, this cost could be somewhere from 5 to 10%, or on occasion up to 20%. So I'd say that's significant for the town of Poultney. Now, in wrapping up the presentation and before taking questions, we did want to provide the town with an idea of the next steps, what you can expect to see going forward. We will be looking for the town's concurrence with the recommended alternative. And to summarize that again, it's to rehabilitate the existing truss, replace the substructures that support that truss, and to use a temporary bridge to maintain traffic throughout construction. Some of the activities moving forward that you can expect to see are we'll finish the development phase of the project, or the definition with conceptual plans, and we'll distribute those for comment. Any local agreements with the town will be processed. And then as we move into the design phase of the project, we'll complete the right-of-way process to obtain any necessary rights. And we'll obtain any permitting and any environmental permits that we need. And then throughout the design process, we'll also develop and submit plans and estimates at preliminary and final milestones. So, I guess with that, I just want to say thank you again. If you'd like any more information on the project, there's a link up at the top here that'll lead you to the VTrans website where you can download the scoping report and the fact sheet. But at this point, we'll open it up and feel free to ask any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Please stand and talk really loud.
I have two questions. One is, will there be a weight limit on the temporary bridge, and what would that be?
There will not be a weight limit on the temporary bridge.
Okay. And the second question is, I know we're limited as to the historic nature of the bridge, but would the public be allowed to produce any input on the design?
On the design of the rehab of the truss?
Right. Is that going to be, are you going to be having more public meetings?
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. I think so. When we complete each phase of the project development, so the next step will be conceptual plans, and when we complete those, they will be sent to the town with a comment period on that, and then we will do that again at preliminary plans, and then final plans. So there's 3 stages of plan development that we will send to the town for an opportunity to comment on the design.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions?
Bob, could I point something out?
Sure.
I expect perhaps some people here might have this question, so I thought I'd put it out there. As everyone knows, we did a temporary emergency repair to the bridge in 2021, and there's some concern that if that emergency repair proves to be less than ideal as far as the temporary repair, you and I, Bob, and Jason, I think we discussed that provided the right-of-way are all in place and the permitting and the archaeological, you've given us the idea that even before construction, if the bridge that's currently there fails, if all this other permitting right-of-way stuff, the temporary bridge could be put in place sooner rather than later, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, our goal is to move through, and we've already got the ball rolling on some of the pieces just to get the right-of-way process going sooner than we typically do. So that's correct. If we have the easements acquired from private property owners necessary to build the temporary bridge, as well as the permits in place, and for some reason this bridge needed to be closed before we could advertise this project as a whole for construction, we could put out a separate contract with a state-owned, with the VTrans owns an inventory of temporary modular bridges, and we could put out a separate contract, provided all those things are in place, to mobilize a contractor and just install the temporary bridge. There could be a period of time for that to all be lined up, but I would think within a month or two, if everything's in place, if that were to happen, we should be able to get out there fairly quickly and get a temporary bridge in place.
Anybody else have any questions? The bridge?
Mark, do you have an idea of how long the temporary bridge and construction, once it starts, would be in place, start to finish?
Yeah, I can speak to that, and Jason, you can weigh in as well if you want. I think sort of at this conceptual stage, we haven't really nailed that down. We're confident that it's going to be two full construction seasons, and depending on when the project goes out for advertisement, will sort of impact. It could potentially span 3 construction seasons just due to timing with in-water work windows and that sort of thing. Potentially, if it works out with where the project schedule is at, we could allow winter work in the contract that would help move the project along faster. But in order for that to work, it really has to, like, removing the old bridge, taking the deck off, that sort of stuff you can do in the winter. But for the pouring the new bridge deck and painting and that sort of stuff. If that fell during the winter months, that wouldn't be something we would allow just due to quality concerns. So, recognizing that having the single lane alternating one-way traffic is an inconvenience, we'll certainly look to shorten up the duration and provide that flexibility of winter work if it seems appropriate to help speed it up. But to answer the question, I think fairly confident it's 2 full construction seasons.
I'd just like to say thank you for considering the alternating traffic pattern for not only safety, but shortening up that detour. So thank you.
Sure.
And I don't think, Bob, it was touched on, and maybe it goes without saying, but because it's a single lane bridge, there will be temporary traffic lights controlling the traffic patterns. And I know we had a field meeting, I guess it was last week or maybe the week before. I don't think you folks have determined where those lights would be placed. Is that still accurate?
Correct. Yeah, the alignment for the temporary bridge will have to be really nailed down to figure out where those will be exactly. I don't know, Jason, if you want to roll back to one of those slides and show approximately where they might be, but the exact location will.
Yeah, and this may be the best slide that we have, Bob, but it may not even capture where the signal might be actually off the screens. Just based on driveways and given the signal location, there will be consideration taken to not put it right in front of somebody's driveway and block them in, essentially, and finding the right spot for that. So
probably, would you say probably at an approximate location, maybe the end of the begin-end project, like where the road changes from black to tan? I mean, that's probably a rough approximation of where they might be.
Yeah, I think that's a rough approximation. I'm looking at it, and I might even consider putting it to the left of that driveway. That's right there too. So again, so we're not blocking that right. Driveway.
Yeah, but they will certainly, some of the driveways will end up in between the signals, and we do have ways to deal with that. Comes up quite a bit on projects where we need temporary signals. So there are additional signals to allow folks exiting a driveway to know which direction traffic is flowing and if it's safe to enter. So that would be something we consider as well, of course.
Back.
My name is Susan Holtzman, relatively new in town. In this time of changing weather patterns, where we've had flooding in this area before from both sides of the bridge, I assume that's been considered, and also that all the materials that are being used and that are being taken away, the river itself will be protected in an environmentally sound way. I'm assuming that's true. I just want to hear it.
Jason and Bob, did you hear what the question is?
Yeah, I think I caught it. I guess to address the first part of that question, regarding hydraulics and the flow of the river through the bridge, one of the benefits of moving the limit locations will be to open up that channel a little bit, and allow the river to flow better. And it's not just saying that, it's developing final hydraulics for it. Per the project requirements and the permitting, we essentially have to demonstrate that there's no rise to the bridge based on the change we're making, or in this case, I think there would actually be an improvement. So, that'll be fully hydraulically modeled, and our water resources engineers take a look at that to make sure, we expect no rise in the flood events, or decrease essentially. And then with regards to impacting the waterway, obviously you're talking about sandblasting and painting a truss that might have old lead paint on it. So all those environmental considerations will definitely be dealt with. You know, one of the larger factors in a project like this is how to deal with that. And so it'll ultimately be up to the contractor, but one thing we've considered is that the contractor may take the bridge right off and set it in the roadway between the temporary bridge, between where the temporary roadway departs and the old abutment, and do the work there. But regardless, in any case, they have to contain all those materials and deal with them appropriately. Bob, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I'll just say we frequently repaint bridges with lead paint over water. And you know, the contractor in those cases, if they choose to do it this way, will install containment, basically a tent around the bridge and including underneath it to catch everything. And there's it's very controlled with dealing with lead. So really, I would say there's no risk to the. We've got that pretty well covered, I would say.
I'd also add that from our discussions that we had previously, Bob and Jason, that any of the material that's brought in for the temporary bridge is removed. And you also stated that oftentimes, because you work with, I can't remember the position, but an arborist that's on your team, oftentimes they leave where that temporary bridge is actually in better condition with new plantings and things of that nature.
Correct. Yeah. The fill for the temporary roadway, the approaches to the temporary bridge will come out. And we have a landscape architect through VTrans that will develop a planting plan where there is clearing needed. And we also have an arborist available if there's a large sycamore tree on the southwest corner that may potentially need some trimming. We're hopeful we can save it. Something we're certainly taking a close look at. But any situation where there's some modifications needed to a mature tree like that, we have resources as well that can come out and make that assessment just to make sure that it's going to survive after we're gone. If we're excavating next to it and impacting the root structure, those sort of things. So, but there will be, as we move through the plan development process, a planting plan that'll be developed with the private property owners where the plantings are on their property. They'll have a chance to provide input on that, and then any plantings within the town highway right of way will be shown there as well for the town to weigh in on.
Good question. Anybody else? That's Paul. No, great. Thank you so much. And I guess we'll get a hold of everybody for the next days.
So when, Jason and Bob, when are you, I mean, I know we called this an alternatives presentation meeting, but really it seems like there's one alternative. When would you like to secure the concurrence of the select board for the alternative that you're proposing?
So I'll follow up with an email with a form that with a checkbox of the, well, usually there's multiple alternatives, but I guess maybe we don't need the checkboxes on this one. And just to formalize it, we asked for signatures of the select board. So I'll get that over to you, try to get it over to you later this week, Paul. And then if you could just maybe get that signed at the next meeting, if that works, and get it back to me. We're moving ahead, assuming, since there was one alternative, that, and with the interest of time with the condition of this bridge, we've already got basically have conceptual plans are done. So as soon as we get the concurrence, we'll be following up with conceptual plans for you to see, and VHB will be moving into the preliminary design phase pretty quickly here. So yeah, then the next step after we get your concurrence is I'll work with our contract administration section to draft the finance and maintenance agreement for the project that the town will need to sign. But that really, again, won't make a big difference here if you concur with the recommended alternative, since it will be 0% share for the town unless there's any non-participating costs for any reason. But we will still need a finance and maintenance agreement in place just to cover what's included and what's not. So,
Okay.
and in this case, typically if there were contaminated soils within the town highway right of way, the town would be 100% responsible for those, and that would still be the case here. I don't know if we have any reason to believe at this point that there would be contaminated soils here. Just something to note. And then if there were any enhancements that the town wanted that were sort of above and beyond what we can justify as part of the project, those would be considered non-participating costs as well.
Okay, thanks. I think there's one more question.
Sure.
Just a point of clarification, that says upstream temporary bridge layout.
Oh, yeah, that's a typo. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yep. Yeah, so the sheet it's partially covered up on my screen, but the north is to the right. So the river is flowing bottom of the page to the top.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks for your
welcome
time. Take care.
And this is, as most of you have it, I know you can print this out if you want a copy of the presentation. It is online. If you want to print out exactly what he went over, it is on there online. I'm going to go right to print.
Sure.
All right, we'll go right to Kim Lennox. Congratulations, first of all. And she's going to be down talking about the Vermont Council on Rural Development.
Yeah, where do you want me?
You can stand right up and project your voice like I know you can.
You want me on this side?
That way they can see you on the Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think most of you know me, but just in case, my name is Kim Rupe Lennox. I was a lifelong Poultney resident until last year, so it feels good to be back. I respect that you have a lot of topics to cover the rest of the evening, so I will be brief. I work for the Vermont Council on Rural Development, and so to refresh some of your memories, we were here in 2019 after the closure of Green Mountain College and conducted the community visits that were at the high school. I was not an employee at the time, but worked in economic development, so was involved in the process anyway. We are a nonprofit, neutral, nonpartisan organization that covers the state of Vermont and supports rural towns across the state. In addition to our community visit program, we support local communities and their leaders to build projects on the local ground level. One of the things that we've been toying around with recently is how to better support communities post a community visit. So, for example, the one that we had in 2019. We have done various leadership cohorts around the state, but none of them have been specific to a community. They've been, post-community visit. We might have 5 different towns across the state. People will come and participate those in a virtual setting, but we have not done one that's specific to a community. And that's been something that we've really wanted to do in the past. We have a Vermont community leadership that we host once a year that brings over 500 community leaders across the state to talk about the work that they're doing in the communities and provide skills and technical assistance to them while they're there. We hosted that in August in Randall, and our executive director and all of our staff were incredibly impressed by the number of Poultney residents that attended that, and also were speakers. A couple of Poultney residents were there, and it was wonderful to see many of you in that capacity. So after that summit happened, one of the things that we started talking about was we've had this idea of working in one specific community after a community visit process. We're really impressed with the residents of Poultney and how they showed up to the summit. Let's try this pilot program. So I'm here tonight to share with you, we've been toying around this idea, really want to bring it to the town. I will tell you that it is no cost to the town. I'm not here to ask for money in any capacity. We have a private funder who has agreed to support this project for the town of Poultney. So we want to bring to you a 4-month workshop series. It would be 4 separate workshops that would be technical assistance skills. Speakers would come in from our staff, other organizations around the state, It would be open to residents of Poultney. Ideally, we're looking for around 20 people, but I know this is a town that shows up, so we could very much be over that. We do not want to turn people away. However, we would conduct an interest form to get your commitment and buy-in. We need people that can show up to all 4 of them. If you can't come to all of them, we really need you to kind of commit to those 4. We did a little due diligence. We talked to a few people in town to see, what are you working on? What do you want to see in your town? What resources do you need to continue those projects? So to refresh your memory, some of the things that came out of that community visit process a few years ago was bring a bank to town, develop a makerspace, support your recreation trails. Obviously, many of those things have happened. Some of them are still in the works. I don't live here anymore. I don't know where they are. But those things I'm sure have changed as well. You obviously have a makerspace now, which is wonderful. But now what are you working on? It's been a few years. How can we support you and bring those projects to life? We don't come into a community that we're not invited to. We don't tell you what you should do. You know your community better than us. And we want to support you in that capacity. So really our ask is, if this is something that the select board would support, you can decide if that's a formal vote or just saying, green light, go ahead. Again, no cost to participants or taxpayers. So that's kind of it in a very crash course nutshell. We would be looking at late summer to kick this off, but would really like to get the interest forms out sooner rather than later. So
Can I put you on the spot?
you can try.
So you were on the select board for a brief period of time.
I was.
And I don't think you ever encountered a crowd like this at a select board meeting.
I did not. I'm impressed.
So there's a recent topic that probably maybe your group can help on, centered around youth activities in town. Maybe you're familiar with some of what I'm talking about.
I am familiar.
Is that something potentially your organization can assist with?
I would say potentially. Like I said, we don't come in and tell you what you should do or shouldn't do. You as a community would need to identify what you want to work on. So that's what we would say during the community visit process. And if you remember, we gave you little dots and you voted on the wall of what you wanted to do and what you thought was the highest priority. And then we picked, I think, 4, maybe 3. Obviously, we're not, this isn't that extent. We're not going to do dot voting and things like that. But you as a community member, what do you feel is important? If you feel like this is what's of importance right now and you have an idea yourself on something you want to do for the town, not that you want someone else to do, but what you want to do for the town, maybe this is the platform for that. So we don't tell you what you should be working on. Neutral, nonpartisan.
Well, where would they go to if they have questions or want to know a little bit more about it and where to sign up?
We will be doing some outreach once we get the green light from all of you. In the meantime, you can feel free to email me. I'm just kim@btrural.org. I can share with Paul and we can put it in the minutes or something. You can feel free to reach out to me if you have questions in the meantime, but we'll be putting items in the free press and online and things like that in the coming weeks as soon as we have the go ahead. Can I call them people? I don't know.
Yes. Questions we can.
If we did decide on 2 or 3 new items, if the concerns have changed or whatever, because I really wasn't familiar with, the makerspace and that part of it, do you then can help with grants and funding and where to go for resources? Is that the idea that you can steer the committee into some resources to back up hypothetically if they wanted a more robust recreation plan?
Yes, that is the idea. So as we've done some of this research with a very few number of residents in town, including your economic development director, we got some feedback of resources and skills specifically that would be most helpful based on projects that you're working on. One of them was budgets, how to access funding, both state and federal funding and local funding. So we would then bring resources to you, whether that's an individual or reading materials, whatever that might be, based on what we hear from you and kind of those interest forms, and bring them to you. We don't have money to share. We're a nonprofit, but we know people around the state and can bring them to you in your community. And the idea also, some of the feedback we heard, and we built into kind of this draft timeline is, bringing you all together in a very informal setting. We would love you to be able to continue to meet after we're gone. So we have kind of 4 structured workshops for you, but it would be wonderful to see this group of people continue to meet and work on these projects separately. So we've actually built in these optional networking evenings the week after our formal workshop, so that, and we won't come, we're not residents of Poultney, you would meet and just say like, here's what I'm working on, can I have help with this? What are you working on? How can I help with that? And things like that. So we'll definitely bring resources in and hope that you would continue this work after we're gone. And like I said in the beginning, this is a pilot program. If it works in Poultney, we will definitely be replicating this in other communities across the state, kind of post community visit process 4 or 5 years later. Because ideas change based on things that have happened. Obviously, there's a lot happening.
Would they kind of hone it in so it's only like 2 or 3 groups instead of everybody comes in like 15, 20?
I think we will likely have to adjust. I've shared with our exec director, just as someone who has lived in this community, that people show up in this town. So we might have to break out in 3 groups. I don't know yet. Being a pilot program, we'll kind of see. I would love to see us stay in one group just because it would, to be blunt, be easier. And everybody can be in one room. But if we need to adjust and do little breakout groups, we will. We're certainly flexible and not, doesn't need to be done one specific way because that was the original idea. We will certainly adjust.
Thank you. Questions for Kim?
Sure. Just for clarification, does this anonymous private funder already have stakes in Poultney, or is it truly like no strings attached funding?
They do have, they are aware to the town of Poultney. I don't know if I can publicly share who they are yet, and I want to be sensitive of that. But they are familiar with the town of us. And longtime donors to us too. They're familiar with our work.
But would or would not have a voice within the process of these workshops?
No, they're aware of what we're doing. We've shared a tentative kind of curriculum with them and are very much on board. You're welcome. So I'll take your lead on like what happens that you you don't need to decide.
I should note that one of the select board members, Rick Lapierre, is actually on the Zoom call. So I don't just so we know that there's another select board member here if people are wondering, because we did touch on the fact that Jeff King wasn't here, but Rick is on the Zoom meeting. I mean, I think if you're looking for some formal motion or something, I don't see a downside to it. And that we really appreciate the folks that attended that summit that actually drew the attention to Poultney, and we appreciate you guys willing to let us be your guinea pigs on this.
Yeah, of course. And I see Danny Lang in the back. He was one of our speakers. So I just saw you over there and wanted to give you a little shout out. So thanks for doing that.
Does anyone make a motion?
Yeah. I can make a motion to accept Kim's presentation for this meetings.
Thank you for looking here.
That's making the word.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Victor?
Yeah. Good. Great. Good job.
Thank
Thank you, Kim. Nice.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks. You want to go to 7?
Sure. So the moment of truth, why probably most of you folks are here. I do know, stemming from some activities in town and such, and I've invited some law enforcement folks here just to introduce themselves. You probably know some of them. Sheriff David Fox, Deputy Gregory Ricketts, Counsel Dale Kerber. We've got Senator Terry Williams with us, and Joe DeBonis, the principal of the high school, is back there. Let's see if I'm not pointing you out, you're lucky. So I do know that there's a lot of activity, and I think some of the concerns are, because I've talked to people and they've told me, and I'm sorry to say I'm not on Facebook, so I don't see a lot of that. But I don't know. I mean, do we want to talk about how very fundamentally how the sheriff's department, the constable's office, the state police, how they're accountable or their communication systems with the state's attorney's office? I don't really know how we want to start this.
Questions, I guess. Did they have a station?
No, I'm not inviting them.
Yeah, just please stand.
Yeah. Okay, please. Rachel Totten, I'm the person on Facebook writing with your stuff. We met last night. I think it'd be helpful to get education about what you can and can't do. And then when are you available? We know we have a constable, but we don't know when you're available. Is it come and go? And how do we actually?
I'll try and address when I work, how I work, what I do, and try and also give you just if you ask for an education. If this had happened 15 years ago, the people that were responsible for this would have been locked up in the woodside. But due to legislative actions, and Terry can probably speak to that wherever he went. The way our legislature has gone with juvenile law is we no longer have a Woodside. We have no juvenile detention center in Vermont. So the possibility of locking any of these people up under the age of 22, they're trying to raise the age of juvenile delinquency to 25 because of the scientific evidence. And it is true that the brain is not fully developed until it's 25 years old, because there has been talk, well, it's not going to go anywhere, of raising the age of being able to buy tobacco and alcohol to 25 because of that. So what has happened and what has evolved over the years is that our legislature, which is pretty much driven by what goes on in Chittenden County, unfortunately, is that these juveniles they can be rehabilitated because their brains aren't developed yet. So our tools that we have in law enforcement have been, right now, we've been totally stripped. If one of these persons were to commit the crime of murder, they would probably be arraigned, but because there is no place to put them, they would be put back out probably on 24-hour surveillance, but they're not going to get locked up. Right now, if we have to make an arrest for a juvenile, the process we have to do with the state's attorney's office is we have to do our complete case up on these juveniles, which sometimes takes days to get all your information together. Correct, Sheriff?
Correct.
It sometimes might take weeks of statements, especially for what's gone on down here, because you interview somebody and then somebody else says, well, they saw this or they heard this. To get records from Facebook for your case takes months because you have to subpoena those records. So by the time you get what's going on down here, I'll get to you in a second. By the time it gets to that, it could be months before we even get an answer from the state's attorney's office, whether they're going to go forward with charges, and then they give us a court date. We used to have a list of court dates for juvenile citations. We do not have that anymore. COVID took care of that. Actually, any arraignments for juveniles during COVID for 2 years, none of that happened. So you've got 2 years of juvenile delinquency that has happened. And we have been powerless because we can't submit cases because they were not taking them for juveniles. And unfortunately, a lot of these kids already know that, and they've been empowered by our system. So we are basically powerless as law enforcement to deal with these kids because the way our bail reforms have gone, where our laws have gone. And right now there's, thank God he vetoed it, but the governor vetoed a law that we can't use deception when talking to juveniles. We have to be straightforward and honest with them. And quite frankly, who's gonna, again, we weren't using deception or coercion to get confessions out of these kids. We would tell them, so-and-so said this, is that true? Well, so-and-so said this, so is that true? And you would end up, kids would start talking about what's going on, because the amount of information we get on cases is very minor compared to what's out there. I'm not on social media because I get too many complaints from social media, so I don't monitor that. But that's where we're stuck when it comes to juveniles. The case in point is the incident that Fairhaven had with Jack Sawyer, and we were pretty much powerless. Some people were upset, but I understood where the then state's attorney, Rose Kennedy, decided to take and charge him in juvenile court because of the way our laws were, is that they can keep track of that person until they're 22 years of age. And that's why it went that route. But nobody knew what happened because everything went to the juvenile court system, so nobody can find out what had happened there. But that was the only way to keep any kind of idea as to where he was and what was happening. Because if he'd have gone to adult court, it would have been, if he would have pled out to it, it would have been, with our sentencing guidelines, he'd have got probation at most. There would have been absolutely no jail time for that. So that's what we're fighting, that uphill battle. And the other issue is, you look at I started, like I said, 25 years ago, and I just look at the breakdown of the family values. These kids that a lot of them are doing that, they don't have anybody to go home to at night. So they're online and they're getting all of their information and all of the things that they do from social media, and they're just emulating it. And it's sad where our country has gone, but I don't have the solution. Maybe Terry will. He's got his question.
I'll be that guy. Can you do a quick summary of the catalyzing incident that has everybody here? I was here for the road report.
I'm going to have. I work full time in Fairhaven. I work 50 plus hours a week up there. And every time an incident happened down here, I was working up there. So I never actually got involved with any of the major incidents. I had some of the players up there in Fairhaven.
Right.
And I know of one incident where the two opposing groups fought in my park. I never got a call on it. I got a call from one kid, which I can't mention. And the reason I got a call on it is because the place he was living, his father's girlfriend locked him out of the house. That's why he called. Nobody else has called from that fight. Even the kid that got sent to the hospital. I heard the parents were going to come in the next day and file a complaint. They never did.
So just to clarify, there's kid violence, like there's, because like I said, I'm treating me like I'm totally ignorant of the situation.
I think
assaults in the last 2 weeks. 4 assaults.
I don't know how many of you.
I don't know how much.
I know the state police have one today.
I know there's been, I actually think today was the 5th one. Either the 4th or the 5th one.
What are your hours in Poultney?
My hours, they vary when I can get down here to work because of when I first started here in 98, I worked a lot more hours than I probably should have. My family suffered. Up there, I'm working 50 plus hours a week since 2008. So I work down here when I can. And I'm getting older, so it's kind of hard to work.
But you are a constable.
I am. That's all we have. We do not have a second constable. The board has discussed this. They can, well, again, I don't know how many people were here when you were here when we had discussions about just a few years ago.
Just for clarification, if people don't know, the town of Poultney contracts with the Rutland County Sheriff's Department for 38 hours. Excuse me? 32 hours a week. So that's essentially what we have for law enforcement in Poultney at the moment.
So how I worked it in time past was I try to alternate my hours with the Sheriff's Department so that I'm on when they're not here. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I know I'll get you. I know Mark had his name.
And it might just nip some of it down. Thank you for explaining how your guys' hands are essentially tied. What can we do as a community to support you and specifically all the law enforcement? Would it be letter writing? Would it be grassroots?
There has to be a lot of noise made in Montpelier. A lot. Because the people that are passing these laws have no idea the consequences. They're only looking at the scientific evidence. These brains aren't developed yet, so we've got to treat them as juveniles. Well, there comes a point in time Even if you don't hold your 2-year-old accountable for their actions, by the time they're 10 or 12 years old, you have a kid that is no longer controlled. So the bottom line is everybody has to be accountable for their actions. And though our laws have gotten the way it is now, they're not. People are not being held accountable for their actions.
So would it be the state's attorney? Would that help somebody bring in the
Well, everybody wants to, here's the whole thing, is our legislature makes our laws. The state's attorney has to follow those laws. Our legislature makes bail reform laws and sentencing guidelines that the judges actually have to follow. The judges cannot put bail on most of these cases anymore. There has to be some serious consequences, a serious risk of flight, a serious risk, not just a risk to the general public, a serious risk that whoever is before that judge is going to recommit that offense if he gets let go. And then, so that the judge's hands are tied right now as well. It's not just our hands, the state's attorney's hands, because of the way our laws have been passed. It's not just here in Vermont. It's sweeping, basically the nation. That's a lot of the problem. So they need to know up there that this is not working. It's not working. They don't care. I'm going to put it bluntly, Mark. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't care. They only care that these kids, they're kids. So we've got to treat them as kids. And at some point in time, they have to be held accountable. He had his hand up first, so I'll get you.
Okay, so full disclosure, my kid was the third adult. Not that I want punishment or anything like that. Realistically, law enforcement is the last resort. Is there a way that we can, I believe I talked to the deputy about how he sees a lot of this stuff on Facebook and nobody actually reports it.
That's very true.
Would us reporting the little stuff, would it be too much? Would it be an overwhelming deluge? Or do you guys want reports on every little thing?
I have always put in my letters that it's better to over-report than under-report. Okay. I would rather respond to something that's nothing, rather than after it's been nothing for several times, and now it's way bigger than it should be.
Do you all feel the same, Sheriff's Department? I do, and I'll put to the example of Wednesday when we had the report of a shooting. There were no specifics. The post was made on social media. There was no author to this. So we had no one to go to. So everyone that saw this on social media reposted it, maybe added something to it, said they knew something else about it. So we're trying to track down all these people that may have put a name on these social media posts. We're going there and they're like, hey, Joe, did you put this post out? What do you know about it? Oh, I heard that from Bill. Okay, Bill who? So we go to see Bill and Bill says, well, I heard that from Tom down at the store. So inevitably, in the end of it, we weren't able to track anybody down that had any solid information on anything to do with the firearm on Wednesday. So everything was just a big hearsay, whisper down the line, like when you were a kid, that type of story, because nothing that we found was substantial to prove that, to say that, yes, so-and-so took this, so-and-so had it, we know it was them because of this reason. We had none of that. So that caused a lot of turmoil in town of like, well, I know this and I know that. Well, when it came right down to it, some of the people, they didn't know it. They were reposting it. And I understand that everybody wants other people to know about an issue like that in town. But if you actually heard something, like maybe the original poster, and I don't know who it is because it was anonymous, had called us and said, hey, my son or my daughter or somebody heard this in this conversation and they were overheard this person talking about it. There you go. We got a starting point. We can go direct to the source that heard it. What did you hear? What exactly was the context of the conversation? Who said it? We're going directly to that person now. So we don't have to go through 25, 30, 50 other people that reposted and maybe brought something old up that had been on post before, added something to the post that was already out there. And in the end, we spent until 1 a.m. tracking down, knocking on doors, waking people up all over town. Did you actually see this? Did you know about it? No, I didn't. I heard it from this one. And it's like, it was just a never ending. It wasn't me. I didn't know. it came from someone else, and then it never came from anyone, but.
So you did
somewhere
reach out to people who had put things on.
Yeah, everything that we had a name attached to, the night that came out, we went and knocked on doors. We had 4 deputies in town, we had 2 state troopers, were you around Dale that night? So we were all working together, the school was out, everybody was working, we're trying to track down all these needs. Actually, I had 5 guys, my school resource officer had came in from home. So we were tracking down everything that we could. There was no validity to anything that we were able to track down. So if you get something like that, I mean, social media is great. If somebody's dog is lost and you saw it on Willow Road, that's great. But if you hear something about a possible shooting, somebody going to burn something down, and it's information that is relatively firsthand to you, by all means, call us. We'll come and talk to you. Who said it? We're going to go talk to them. Now they got to explain why they said that. Oh, I was just kidding around. I was upset. I was mad. I don't even own a gun. I don't even know how to shoot one. Okay, maybe not. But now we know who that came from. And if something further develops, we have that starting point. Wednesday night was a chase your tail type of night for us, but
But when you searched, did you get their phones and dump them?
Well, we didn't have anybody to go to.
So there was a post, I had a picture from this kid's chance that said, we gonna have fun tomorrow. I have the picture.
We went to, I won't say that name, but we went to the house and we did interview, and there's nothing other than that statement is not going to put, as we have kids beating kids up in the street, we can't put them in jail. So a statement of gun gonna have fun is not going to go in.
You get a phone and dump it to see, because that's where kids
Well,
have it.
where you go there, they're gonna have to volunteer their phone.
Right, because we can't.
What teenager wants to give their phone up today?
I guess my frustration is, this started back in April. I made a call to the sheriff's department because my nephew's bike had been stolen. And I was told, I'm sorry, we can't respond to it. We don't have anybody on call until Tuesday after 4 o'clock. This was on a Thursday. So we don't have anybody in town to respond to this stuff. I think if there was more presence in town, these kids would get in line. They're wheeling bikes out in front of cars. It's very well known. Parents are frustrated. Other parents don't do anything about it. And then not have anybody that can respond in a timely fashion just is very upsetting. When Jordan got beat up that night, I called the sheriff's department. They told me to call the state police. I've done this like 4 times, and I just get passed around from the sheriffs to the state police. Go file a stalking order. The stalking orders get denied. I get it that you guys, your hands are tied. You're right. We have to go to the legislator because that's where we're going to make change. But who's to say we can't get more presence in town? Like, what hours are people here? Are they working the right hours? Do we have the right coverage at the right time of day? Like, we don't know any of that. But it is frustrating.
We have 32 hours a week. And typically when we don't have someone on in the town of Poultney, if someone from the town of Poultney calls us, we will transfer that call to the state police.
And then the state police say they can't respond to it because it's not a real threat.
Exactly.
That's not our call. And Greg will testify to this. If we have calls, we generally respond to it. It's not that we don't. Some of the stuff that you get, you're like, wow, we're going there for that. But okay, because somebody wants to see a face.
There's nobody here from state police? I'll just make a comment. I'm not going to put them down, but their way they have gone is that they do not want to handle quality of life calls in the towns any longer, regardless of how much everybody here that pays taxes in this town pays taxes to the state police for the quality of life calls. They're saying they're stretched too thin, so they're flat out refusing to answer these calls.
But yet you see 3 cops every day parked at the pull-offs on the highway, all conjugating.
But we can't speak for them. I'm not sure who that is. I'm not sure who it is. It's not the sheriff's department. When I'm down here for 32 hours a week. If I get a criminal case that needs to be filed, I could spend that 32 hours sitting in front of a computer in Rutland. That's how much paperwork we have to do. And that's our 32 hours for the week.
So there's not a lot of presence in town.
If there's a lot of computer time, no, because all this stuff has to get documented.
Right. And I get it. You guys are overwhelmed. I get it.
It's a crazy amount.
We have computers in our cars, but I can't submit a criminal case from my car. It has to be done at the office in Rutland. It has to be submitted to the state's attorney. It's a process. It's not something that takes a half hour. I can spend 32 hours of my work week sitting in front of a computer.
I'll get you. You can put your arm down.
Hi.
You go ahead. She had her arm up next, and then Bubby, and then we'll get you.
Like any first two, I would like to follow up right after.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question in relationship to inter-organizational partnership because I've worked in other counties in the state where the sheriffs have actually written affidavits alongside DCF to bring the kid into care to then be able to receive treatment. Have you guys initiated any lit meetings or collaborated with DCF yet on these matters? Because it sounds like these kids need treatment. And with raising a higher level to a lit meeting, that would get them on that path. It's really Department of Mental Health or DCF has to pay for treatment. So even though we don't have Woodside, we can send them outside of state if there's a high need. I've heard a lot of different rumors about different other behaviors that are triggers that rise to the level of even more like psychological concern. So I'm just wondering, have you guys tried that route yet?
We make reports to DCF all the time, and unfortunately, 90 to 95% of them, we get a response back that it doesn't rise to that level where they're going to do an investigation into it. Unfortunately, they're very understaffed, very overworked as well. Yes, we when we're dealing with juveniles, we are mandated reporters. We have to file reports with them. So it does get done, but unfortunately, the response we get back 90% of the time is that they're not going to take the case.
And a little bit more to that is that if the juvenile is then in that 16 to 17-year-old range, DCF loses control or any ability to help that child at the age of 18. So their effort goes more to younger children that they know they can keep in the system longer and provide more assistance. So as they're older in the system, they may not get as much direction or, contact as someone younger that will be in the system.
Maybe in Rutland County.
I think it's Rutland County. I could say that, but I think it's pretty much. I don't know what about the other parts of the state.
I would say it's across the state.
What's that?
It's across the state in terms of the wait list. I worked with a 14-year-old last year, and well, it was 2 years ago actually now, and they finally got placed 2 years later. Meanwhile, they wreaked havoc from Burlington all the way down to Rutland County, and nobody could touch them.
Dale, what do you guys suggest? Because I know when we think about Poultney, especially now, we do offer a lot to kids. It's not like we don't have anything here between the trails, the biking, the recreation. Slate Valley Arts opened up like an open mic night for them. So they're really trying to get those younger kids, but not too young, like the 14 up. They're trying to get things for them to do. And I know it might not be the right kids that are going to go. Same thing happens. You get other kids who go there. It's not those kids type of thing. But I mean, I think we offer a lot, and it hasn't been a big issue forever, but it just seems like all of a sudden now it's just the timing. I don't believe it's just all families. To me, I don't believe it's just they come from a bad family, therefore they're doing these things. I think it's more than that, but I don't know, like from your perspective, what can we do? I don't want to say we have to wait till something seriously happens.
Well, I hate
before
to
something
say that,
happens.
but that's always been the
Yeah.
case. That happened here a few years ago when we had all the car breaks.
Seriously happened?
The burglary.
I took my kid to the fucking hospital. I'm sorry. I took my kid to the hospital because they beat him to the point where he couldn't recognize it. You want to wait for serious?
Yeah.
What's more serious than that?
I agree.
Okay, I'm a little animated. But again, I don't.
Hang on. I know you had your hand up, Bobby, so go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm trying to close with him. I have 2 children about the same age. Now, what happens if I go down through, I see his kid getting beat. I step out of my vehicle to stop it. Now I'm going to get arrested for it? Is that what you're saying?
No, as long as you're not assaulting that person, no. I'm not going to bring charges against Bobby. I'm not going to do that.
You can hit people to defend life. You can shoot.
Yeah, well,
their life.
Again,
They're killing somebody.
Okay, I'm a veteran instructor. I want to be the better.
An applicant is not a reason to draw it on. Unless they got a weapon in their hand, that's, you don't cross that. That escalates to a level that is not acceptable.
They were coming at me, reaching for their pot.
That's not good.
That's a different story.
Yeah, this isn't Texas.
Reaching for their pocket, coming at me.
I'm not gonna shoot you. I'm not gonna live with that. I live with enough.
I didn't suggest that, I'm just saying that.
Okay.
It's scary.
But we need,
You can protect people's lives.
So my name's Tim, and some folks know me at the bike shop. I've had some of those kids came and were at my shop last year, and I had good interactions with them. But at the same time, I'm a parent of a 15-year-old, and I'm very concerned about what's going on in our town. I appreciate your efforts for sure, and understand that they're limited. But I'm interested in being a community member that would respond if a kid or an adult is being attacked by other community members, which is happening right now. There doesn't seem to be much consequence for that. I am personally interested in being part of a group that would try and respond to that. So if anyone is interested to talk with me about what that could look like, I don't totally know, but I know it would be defensive. It's like, here's a text. I'm being followed by these 3 kids. I'm worried about being attacked. Can you be there and help me out? If I get a text like that, I want to respond. And maybe there's other parents or people in our community who live here who could respond quickly. And if someone's being beat up in the Shaw's parking lot, could just be like, that's not okay, and get in there and try to at least break that up. Because I get it that there's limited law and legislative response to this, but meanwhile, we're a community, we all have children. We'd like our children to be able to walk on the sidewalk and not be overly worried. And when these kids have done it many times and it doesn't seem like they're going somewhere else, so what's the incentive not to do it again? At least if an adult can show up and break it up. And maybe there's some, liable risk for me to do that, but I would choose to show up and try to stop my son being attacked or someone else's son. I don't wish ill will on these kids that are doing the attacking, but I want to try to help a kid who's 3-on-1 getting beat up. So if anyone wants to talk with me more about it, I want to have that discussion. One other quick one is I did talk to police and just said, here's what's going on. Do you have any suggestions? One police officer I talked to in New York State, where I live, said there's an app called Life 360, and he has it with his own kids. And it's just sort of a bit of a, within their own family, they can kind of track and see where their kids are and call for help. But anyways, I brought a clipboard with if anyone's interested. Tim's great for that.
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah, Steve had his hand up earlier.
So we've had damage done to our house, and then I had my truck broken into. What's the limitation? What's the limitation that we can defend our property versus paying a big penalty? I'm not saying go out and shoot them, but I'm saying what is that limitation to where we can defend our property or our person?
You can physically remove them from your property and not get in any trouble. It's your property. The way our courts look at your property, that is your castle, that is your domain. If you've got no trespassing signs in your front yard, they can still walk in your driveway, they can still walk on your sidewalk. That's called curtilage. You can't trespass anybody from that. But beyond that, you can physically remove somebody from your property without any consequence. You're not breaking any law.
How is the 80-year-old woman going to do that? That's living in the town. Yeah. I mean, really, we've got.
I know. I know. I'm getting closer there.
I just wanted to say something about what Tim said. Like I've been around when we have a business right in the middle of town, and right on the rail trail, right where all the roads cross. And I see kids gathering around there sometimes. And if I ever hear any loud noises or any kind of yelling, I'll just stand there and look at them. And most of the time, they'll just disperse from the area and leave. And another one of these assaults that happened was very minor because a couple of my friends were actually there to be there. And when they were witnessed doing this, they ran off, and then they tried to go back through the back of the makerspace, and they saw me, and then they ran off the other way. So a lot of it has to do with just speaking up and trying to just show kind of presence. It's, every time I've been around these kids, as soon as they see me looking at them, I've never said anything to them. I don't engage, but I show my presence that I'm there. And then if something did happen, then yes, obviously you want to try and prevent it from continuing. And, the place where that assault that I'm referring to happened, there were knives found nearby that there's no pure evidence that it came from that. But if somebody wasn't there, that situation could have escalated to the point where it could have escalated to a murder or something like that. And the thing that I'm really worried about is there's been multiple, I don't know if the rumors are true, that there were a quantity of firearms that were stolen recently, whether it was from the kids or not, I don't know. But when that's coinciding with all of this, I think that's what has a lot of people on edge, and maybe knowing if that's actually true or not from y'all's perspective might put people at ease, because I've heard that there's somebody who had a video of these kids in their house stealing an AR-15. So,
as I mentioned earlier, I want to talk to that person because we don't have that.
Okay, so
we have one reported gun theft in town.
Yeah,
one gun
the day before the school shut.
The day before Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right.
and then the day of that school was closed was when this other thing happened, and they said that they reported it to the police. Whether that's true or not, they could be covering that up. But
yeah, it didn't come to the sheriff's department, and speaking with state police, I don't believe that they got it either. And Dale definitely didn't get it.
Okay, well,
Marcus.
From an education standpoint, as brought up earlier, and to Tim's point, it doesn't have to be tonight, but Terry tried to initiate a Poultney neighborhood watch, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, time flies. But 2 years ago. 2 years ago, okay. But the point is, if there is an interest to get Poultney neighborhood watch, are you guys available? Who could be available to educate? To Tim's point, what can you do within the boundaries of the law to,
I have a guy.
Can I make a comment on that? Yeah. About 8 or 10 years ago, there was a Poultney neighborhood watch. It turns out it was two ladies, me, who was in my 60s at that time, and another lady. Nobody else wanted to get involved. But the sheriff's department was great because other towns wanted to get involved. And you actually had like a class and worked with us, what we could do and couldn't do and like that. And maybe that's something that we need to go back to. Classroom type thing for the people who are more interested now.
About a month ago, they set up a neighborhood watch there. Go ahead, ma'am.
My business was on Main Street a number of years ago, and my business was known as the safe zone. So many times, because I had a little hand that was cut out. I don't know if anybody ever remembers that, but because I had that hand in my window, I very often had children come and sit on my bench because their parents weren't quite home yet. Their parents called me and said, can they come and sit on your bench? Maybe we need a safe zone in our windows again so that when a kid feels frightened, they can come to your business and stand there till someone comes and gets them. That's just a suggestion. I would be willing to print little hands, 1,000 of them, if it would save one child.
That's actually in my notes. That exact concept is Mike's right hand up and rolling with that.
Yeah.
You can't talk.
Ever since I got off Main Street and people have moved out, we have lost our little hands. So I would be willing to print them if anybody wanted to get on board with that.
We had a very successful program. The Women's Club did it. And went on every street. We had 2 or 3 houses with that sign in the window.
Yeah.
And we went to the school and told the kids what the signs meant and had their parents to take them around to see where those houses were.
So I'd be on board. Let's get going with that.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say something else because you didn't call me earlier.
You're too short. I couldn't see you.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
The sad thing that we're hearing tonight is these kids have the green light to do whatever they want to do. You know, we can come up with all these great ideas and it'll help a little bit. The bottom line is something has to be done to these kids. And I know you say we can't. They're terrorizing the town right now. It's going to go into the school. These poor kids go to the high school. My grandkids aren't going to be there this week because it's not safe. And I feel bad for the teachers and the administration at that school because they have to try to deal with this. I'm afraid, my fear is we're going to have a school shooting like all these other schools have had. Then they're going to say, oh my God, look what happened.
I don't want anybody to be confused in here. If something happens, we're still going to do our job. So if an assault occurs, of vandalism, whatever, the deputy's going to come and they're going to be issued their citation to court. Now, it may be their fifth one that month or whatever it is, but we're still going to do that to the extent of what we can do. And honestly, Poultney does not have a large group of bad youths. There's a small group that's causing a lot of noise right now. So your kids aren't bad. There's just a small group that's starting to make a stir. And if you call us when things are happening and your kids let you know when things are happening. Now, I'm not saying we can make an arrest or a citation every time that something, hey, they swore at me or they, said they were going to knock me off my bike. That's not a crime. But when it gets to that point, we will continue to lay paperwork on them. And at some point, the state attorney is going to sick of seeing paperwork coming in about these kids.
Did you go out and everybody knew, I thought, the two places where they stole the guns? Did somebody go to those houses and ask, were guns stolen from your house?
The one that we had, we did. And yes, there was one firearm stolen. I don't know about a second house. I don't know about a large group of guns.
They said they had a couple guns.
Yeah. All we're aware of is the one.
If you haven't taken those guns, then they still got them, unfortunately.
Well, we don't know who has them.
Yeah. Maybe everybody that knows these things could talk to those guys. Oh, that's here before we leave tonight. Like, just show them the text, show them the pictures, get them the let's.
So the issue is this is the first time I'm hearing this type of stuff. I'm aware of the gun theft. There was one gun that was stolen, and the investigation so far shows that it wasn't the kids that everyone's saying it was somebody else that was down the road.
Right.
Okay, so that's all I can disclose on that so far. The rest of the stuff is the first time I'm hearing it, and it sounds like it came from somebody else, right? Is that accurate?
It came from.
I'm just trying to understand.
It came from the kid's phone. It has his name right at the top.
Are you talking about the picture that was sent the other night?
The one that says, gonna have some fun tomorrow. Gonna have some fun tomorrow. And he had $60 in his hand.
I've seen that one. The problem is there's nothing.
This is the kid that has assaulted multiple kids in town. I mean, there's a pattern here. And I get it because I had a hearing with the judge. The judge is frustrated. Exactly what you guys are saying. They're so frustrated because there's nothing that gets done with these kids when we do report. Unless they stab and kill somebody, it's pretty much free game.
So we have no way to tie the gun that was stolen to that individual that you're referring to. There's physically no way that I can see right now to tie that gun to him. So I can't arrest him based off of him posting something, including the word gun with money. That's we can't arrest for that.
And they didn't arrest when he assaulted Jordan and broke his nose.
I can't speak for that. I've only responded to one assault, and that was the one that was on York Street where they ended up at Shaw's, and I arrested one child for that. He was issued a citation. That's all we can do. The state police handled the other ones you're referring to. I have no knowledge.
And I know your hands are tied because you're right. They'd be right back on the streets.
So before you leave here tonight, we talked about communication because everybody in the room and somehow through the select board or the town manager or town website clearly, it's not through neighborhood watch and this and that. Once when I called before, someone said, here's the email to report things. Obviously everybody in this room, I'm assuming, is on social media because they're seeing that. But if we had a way to clearly get to the sheriff's department, whether obviously phone call, but, can we make that accessible on a town level, on a town website? Is that, a place to go so we can quickly?
I have a stack of cards I can hand out at my car once we get done here tonight.
But the whole world uses social media. You guys don't have a presence where people can report shit.
Well, it will have my phone number and my email on it. I don't.
And large, like a Facebook? Yeah, we don't typically use that. I mean, we have a Facebook page, but we don't typically take tips or any of that.
If we're not monitoring it, you report something on there.
Yeah, our staffing levels.
I don't mean I don't have crime right now, but where people say, oh, this is, where do you want that to go for? Is this true?
How often when you guys are on duty, are you actually out on the streets patrolling? Versus just
as much as time allows.
It depends on the caseload.
Yeah.
So if I have, let's say I have 2 arrests from the day prior, that's a full day at the office, 12 hours.
But when you're in town, how often are you parked versus out patrolling, checking spots, roaming around town? Because honestly, I'm on Church Street, and I've never seen anybody go by.
So I
only
drive
the one ticket that I got from one of these.
So I
never see people just going around town.
I absolutely do go around town frequently. I spend 80% of my shift when I'm down here driving around. It's very rare that I sit one place. And if you see me sitting one place, you go by a couple hours later, I'm still there. It's probably because I left 3 different times, drove around and came back to that one spot. Or I'm doing paperwork sitting there on my computer, which I can do by being in town. So it's very rare that we just sit someplace for 2 hours. We move where there's people, we move where there's businesses to check on. You might not see the one time I drive by in 1 hour. You might not see the second time, but I've been back and forth on Church Street 3 or 4 times in a couple hour time frame. Because
we maintain a daily activity log where Greg will put down, 8 o'clock, 8:15 patrols and the name of the streets. And
where's that? It's all documented.
Yes, the town gets it on their webpage. They have access to it where they can go in and it's not confidential, so it can be if somebody wanted it.
Are you guys more evening hours or more day hours?
We're split. Greg knows the schedule better than I do.
It's usually noon to midnight. Most of the crime you're going to see is in the afternoon, nighttime. I haven't seen a lot of cases that are early morning, so that kind of fits. It's usually noon to midnight. You'll see me on the weekends. It'll be 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. So all of that, it'll be every traffic stop I've did, every ticket I've issued. You'll be able to see all that. It's all documented. Every arrest, how many hours I'm at the office. It's not a secret. It's all documented. We're trying to get there. Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, 3 things now. One, I would like someone from the Selectboard to moderate, please, because a lot of people have had their hands up. That's not the way that the discussion is going. 2, I would really like Alex to speak because Alex has more knowledge than I do.
I was getting to him.
Yeah.
Well, you can go now. You're now.
No, please. Okay, I will speak, but then please let Alex speak after and don't.
Yeah, that's where I was going next.
Thank
Because
you.
I saw your hand up before his.
Sure. So at the beginning of this discussion, you stated, I believe, that our tools in law enforcement have been totally stripped. I understand often when tools are stripped from one organization, other organizations' tools are strengthened, specifically in terms of accountability and harm reduction. So I'm wondering if you or perhaps if there are other people here tonight with more like specialty knowledge could speak on some of the other options that we have in terms of asking for help with accountability. I also speak as someone who was assaulted 3 years ago, not in this town, did call the non-emergency number like I was supposed to, and 3 years later, still have not seen a court date and do not expect to at this point.
A lot of that is due to COVID, unfortunately. There's cases that are very baffled. I can't speak for the courts. All I know is the cases that I've submitted that are over 3 years old that are still going through the process.
So if your organization, it sounds like, isn't working right now, I would love to hear about what other organizations might be that we might be able to access now, especially in terms of health, harm reduction, accountability. At the most basic standpoint, do children getting assaulted who don't have health insurance Are there ambulance trips and hospital bills being covered?
I have no, that's out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I can tell you my son-in-law is an attorney and he said you can go after them to pay the bills. It's like up to $10,000 you can get. You can request that, yeah. But that,
Don't pull it Alex down, but you can take civil action.
Go ahead. Hang on, Alex is next.
My name is Alex Hilliard. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. Thank you very much. And I am a parent and a community member. I prepared the statement. I'll try to read it really fast. Last week, an individual in the Poultney Neighborhood Watch, a private Facebook group with restricted membership, posted about a potential shooting. They shared screenshots of a conversation, although no names were on the screen to show who it occurred between. One parent claimed there was a kill list. Another group member named two parents and accused their children of stealing their father's truck to steal a gun, to which another member added that the father was actually probably in on it and that he was coaxing the kids into it. I am sure you can imagine what happens when a Facebook group of over 1,500 people from a community see those things together. Now add that there were 2 incidents in the previous week alone, which now I hear there are 4, where children were jumped in town. Words to describe how heinous the violence was were used quite generously. It is no wonder that everyone became very scared. The police conducted a thorough investigation. Thank you very much for coming here tonight. And they invested, including searching their property and belongings. The children had stolen no gun. They had no kill list. The first victim actually had come to the house on York Street to fight that family, the folks that live in the house, and the house that is subject to constant abuse because of their parents' perceived struggles with abiding by the law. The victim felt that the student in the bike gang needed to pay for their parents' crimes because their parents supposedly didn't ever have to face the consequences of the judicial system as said on the page. So the victim went to the house 3 days in a row, and each time the person who was accused told them to go away, and the attacker defended his friend who lives at that house, who was hiding because of the way that his family is treated in this town. Finally, the child defender's friend, or his castle or domain, as Counsel just mentioned, and which of us can really fault him for that? In any case, as can be seen from the Vermont State Police post, charges have been pressed. Something that you may not know yet is that the bike gang evolved as a result of one student in particular relentlessly nagging the so-called gang members when they started as a new student this past January. On and on this went until one day the student finally relented, and then the rumors started. From there, because of the association between blacks and gangs, and because the student in question has 2 siblings who are black and a caregiver who is black, the gang idea took off. HHB policies, in terms of the protected class, HHB is hazing, harassment, and bullying. It's our one tool that you can use in the educational system to, pose a complaint. The HHB policies in terms of the protected class of race cover students and their families due to their race, perceived or actual, and skin color. I myself assumed the student was multiracial before being corrected by his caregiver. This story reached its tragic height as a result of our own implicit bias as community members. What is confusing and hypocritical is that there was a fight between Poultney High School students on another bus earlier in the week, and it did not involve any of the so-called bike gang members. One student had a broken arm, another had stitches, and the incident was not mentioned on the Neighborhood Watch group, nor did the offending student have charges pressed against them. The bullying and harassment these students have experienced is at the hands of other students, school officials, and most importantly, the adults in our Facebook community. Among other things, these children have been assaulted by adults brandishing knives in town, which I believe Jane may have mentioned. They have had a gun pulled on them. They have been called words such as pussies and niggers. And let me tell you, the racial epithets have been used on them very generously. The children in this family have told school officials on multiple occasions that they are being bullied, and the school has not yet protected them from further abuse. Unfortunately, it culminated in violence. I understand parents' fears, but I urge you to consider the idea that these are not savage criminals, but children being reactive to bullying. Bullying has been shown as a major cause of death for youth. As many have mentioned, these kids and their families need love and support, not further rumors. The family deserves justice. not the town, that deserves justice because there is no widespread criminal activity. This narrative has been fabricated by our town's rumor mill, and I believe that when the adults in the community stop hurling insults at children, that things will return to their usual peaceful state. I also believe the town of Poultney should pay for a public workshop or other training in anti-racism, which can be taken by town staff, select board, legislators, emergency officials, teachers, and most importantly, the individuals who call Poultney home. I volunteer to help raise money. Look at how successful the Poultney Downtown Revitalization Committee has been with raising money for the Mark Mural project. I believe we can help defray the cost to our town through grassroots fundraising efforts, such as by the Patreon set up by PDRC member Nick Stark. I would like to thank Nick Stark for his and Mary Sue Reed's efforts to ensure accessibility in meetings, because without them, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Let's have a round of applause from Nick Stark and Mary Sue Reed.
Lots of hands. He's had his up and hasn't got a chance to speak yet.
Jesus. My name's Nick, East Poultney. And 22, 25 juvenile, right? I came from a time when I was 17, they sent you to Vietnam. So it's surprising that people aren't responsible. You know? I really understand your position, and I'm glad that you're here to speak for it. But this is really for Terry. Problem is without authority, criminals get involved. And without authority, people respond to that in negative ways. And we fight amongst ourselves and talk about what we should be doing. It's true. They won't go after you. You don't look like a victim. Where I come from, you know what a victim is, and that's when you go after them. And it doesn't matter if you're here or not, because they're not going to pick the time you're here. So they know when you're here. They know when you're here better than I do, better than you probably.
Absolutely.
So Terry's problem is to fix this somehow. Because
we have another one.
Terry's here.
I can talk with you.
Yeah, Terry's here. My issue is that I know down the road something's going to happen, and we will be responsible. And right now, what I'm saying is it's mostly you that's responsible, because until there's a fixture, until there's a cover, the rest of us are on our own. No matter what we do. I don't want to hurt a kid, but if I pull into town and I see two kids fighting and one's smaller than the other, one's getting a beating, I'm going in. I'm 75 years old, but I don't give a shit. I'm going in. And if the kid comes at me,
as long as it's not an assault.
I don't know what an assault is.
If you do it in anger.
Yeah.
You ended up for the entire time.
Sorry, I'm just building muscle over here. So yesterday when we talked, there was about 30 of us that got together, and we said we wanted to do a neighborhood walk. That we have an email list, 30 people so far, but we need collaboration. We know your hands are tired, but we want to get on the community and walk around. The boys that are having trouble, when you talk to them, apparently they leave you alone. Interesting. I don't know what happened in your situation. It's hard to think about what happened, but we can't put them in jail. You cite them, and then what happens? Nothing, right? Like, so as a community, what can we do? We can go outside. We can talk to our neighbors. We can do a neighborhood watch. We can put tags on our doors so kids know where they're safe and where they're not. We can start a text chain if we need to. There's options, but all the options include collaborating with the police department. The ask last night was, do we need a second constable? Dale there said he's tired. Yeah, 50 hours a week in Fairhaven.
I can speak that a little bit because Terry actually was the one that found that out, is that it's not in our charter.
What is it?
Second constable. It has to be in our charter.
Right. Not a big strip, yeah.
Well, I mean, the charter is actually fairly liberal as far as what the select board could do about public safety and police. It pretty much gives the select board the authority to choose what it wants for public, safety. Cause I looked at the charter last week and I had the town attorney look at it just to make sure, am I missing something here? Cause this looks like a pretty blanket authority. The last time the select board, set its budget, which will start July 1st, they considered, adding more sheriff department hours. And at the time, Sheriff Fox said, well, not even know if I can give you more hours. And then because of some of the conversations that we're having with tonight about the hands being tied, the select board kind of said, is 8 hours, if they're kind of tied up now, is 8 hours more per week gonna really make a difference? And the select board at the time said, no, they don't think the 8 hours more per week, and I can't remember what the increased cost was. But they're setting budgets every year, and it's going to be continued part of the conversation.
Or is it charter available online, Paul, or something?
Yeah, it's codified in the Vermont statutes. It's Title 24. 1301 or something.
Just type it. No, that's the statute on government.
If you go to Title 24, you'll see all the towns, all the cities, Burlington, blah blah blah.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks.
133.
The other thing we wanted to ask was, is it possible, so summer's coming, we know summer's coming, kids get busy, they do things outside and whatnot. So we're wanting to collaborate as a community, but when fall comes, is there any way we could consider as a town working with a district to increase the resource officer in our high school? Because we found out last night that the resource officer is shared amongst the district. I think as a parent, I thought the resource officer was there full time. And that may be a later on discussion.
I don't know if anyone is here from the school, so Joe DeBonis over there.
Yeah, Joe's there.
And I don't know, if you're talking about a resource officer in the school, you're talking about going to the school board and saying, we want Poultney to have a full-time resource officer.
Correct. And that did come up. It was raised last night. And so there's a cost piece there. And so what came out of that community meeting that we had was, can we work together if we need to? We can certainly go to the school board and say, we want a full-time. It might just be nice to have a little bit more than split amongst all the schools in the district. Would the select board consider that if the school board says, no, the funding isn't there? So something that we want to put long-term as we go into fall. And then the other things that came out were a rec committee and maybe a community service committee where we can work on grants to bring stuff into our town. Because I don't think this is going to go away. I know you're saying there's a few kids, but there is a mental health crisis in the United States and there's nobody to take care of them. DCF is strapped. There's no therapist. We're kind of in a tough spot. As a community, we can come together and work together, I believe. And I found that out last night when everyone just showed up and sat in a circle and said, how do we do it? How do we work together? So we're coming to you saying, can we work together to develop a rec board, develop a community service board where we can work together to get funding and programs here to keep these kids busy and catch them when they're little, not when they're 13, 14 on their own. If we could develop relationships with them and get them engaged in our town, it might thwart what's coming in terms of the wave.
I can speak a little bit on that just because I'm rec director, but we have done a lot. We service probably 600 registrations in summer rec camps, and it's for younger ones. We don't have a lot for the older ones, but we do a lot for that age level to work with us. They're trained and they come in and do rec camps, so they can be trained and then they make money. It's amazing how some of the kids don't want to do that. And here's a way for them to come work with little kids Some of them love it and some of them like, I don't want to do that. We've had a number of kids that come in, they sign up like, I want to do that, I want to make money, and then they don't show up and they don't want to be there. So we can put it out there, but I can't make them come. We offer them money. So that's an avenue that we've done for quite a few years. The community service piece, the high school used to have community service. So they would come to me and say, I would like to help out with a rec camp and do so many hours of community service and then get paid for so many hours. And it worked out great. We signed off a certificate and say, you did 12 hours community service, plus you got paid for 12 hours.
Yeah.
So that worked. They don't have to do community service anymore. So kids, they'll come to us like, I don't need to do community service, therefore I don't want to come help out.
And to clarify, it's not just for the kids, it's for the adults too. It's for the retired folks in the community. They want a way to engage and work together and mentor the children. But also, if there's a family in need, that community service committee could potentially go and support that family. I think historically in small town Vermont, churches would do that. I think our church has kind of gone away a little bit. And so what we're saying is, can we as a group of folks get together and potentially support our families that maybe need more support and are not necessarily getting it. And the rec piece is the full-time rec program, for adults and children to bring the community together. So what I found out last night is that people want to connect here, and COVID split everybody away. And now folks are kind of coming in, and the conversation was positive. Like, let's get to work together. Let's become the community that we want to see.
Can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The woman that was here before, that was willing to come back and to do this work with us, right, on things that we want to work on, this is exactly what we should be working on. But we do have things in town, and I would, I don't have any business here. But if I did, I would be going to the cycle place, to reclaim, to find out if they're interested in hosting sessions for these type of kids to gather and to meet and to do something constructive with their time. The issue is that absent high school sports or grade school sports, there's nothing for these kids to do right now. We need an open rec period, and we need leaders in the community that own places like this to take an interest in the kids. Exactly what this man said before. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we have to get these kids involved in so that they don't have good time to go around beating each other up. It's all the rejects that aren't accepted by everybody else that are going to always go to school.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, I'm a little out here, sorry. I forgot your name, I'm sorry.
Alex.
Alex brought up a lot of good points. If we constantly do nothing but treat these kids like criminals, they are going to act upon it. Okay? It's been a struggle in mine to really find the patience in me to forgive these kids and understand that they need help. They don't need a beating. I was in a very different place last week. They were about to get a beating. Okay? I'm incredibly protective of my kids. My family is everything to me. That's not going to solve any of this. No offense to law enforcement. You guys are the last line of defense, and we should solve this long before it gets to you. We should find grace for these kids. We should find a way to mentor them. Tim has done really good work with kids in his shop. He's basically my brother. We need more of an open outreach for these kids. I ran a game store in Rutland, and there's a resident house program there for kids who were convicted of unspeakable things. Okay. Yeah. I watched you mouth it. Yeah. They came into my shop. They came in to play games. I talked to them like they were people, and they were like, wait a minute. And the second time they came into my shop, I talked to them like they were people. And the third time they came to my shop, they brought a new kid with them. And that new kid was about to steal something from my store. And I watched one of the other kids that is on a ban list from another game store go, hey, no, we don't do that like you. We don't do that here. If we show them a little grace and a little compassion and don't necessarily treat them completely like criminals, if we give them the opportunity to actually be decent and a way to express that in the town, I think we can nip this in the bud. Some of them will need a law enforcement route. Some of them might be too far gone. One kid I know for a fact is not too far gone because he feels terrible about what happened to my son. I see it. Okay. So as a town, if we can collectively, like, neighborhood watch is a great idea to mitigate the immediate urgent need, but we really need to really support the rec program, and not just ideas that we think are cool, ideas that the kids want to do.
That's what I was
Okay.
gonna say. You guys talk to the kids.
Yeah.
That's gonna be my next question. Like, where do the high school kids land on this? Where do the middle school land on this? What do they say we need? Because I haven't heard anybody say what the kids say we need, right?
Yeah.
And they're at the crux of this, and I know that there's some adults that say, well, we give them what we need, but that's not worked, and it's not working anymore. So we do need to figure out what the kids need, and that was my follow-up, is like, before we get more law enforcement, before we get more resource officers, can we vote on where those funds go? Because our teachers in town arts track, our rec program, it could probably use more money, and I would like to have a choice if we get more law enforcement that really has their hands tied versus more programming that we can all contribute to.
I think it's a holistic thing. I think, honestly, my kid brought up, like, man, we drive to Manchester to go to a skate park, and that place is full all the time. And it's, dude, zero maintenance. Okay. It's concrete. It doesn't go bad. It's a place for them to congregate that is not hiding on the river, at the bridge, doing whatever. It's a place that has an attendant in the summertime, potentially. It's a place where they can learn something, do something. I know there's a million people. One of them sitting next to me that I bet I could twist his arm to volunteer a little bit. Okay. Okay. I like my kids would go do it. I think that is a better solution than just, we need to go beat the crap out of some 15-year-old. It's not how it should be. It's not a good idea. Believe me, I was there. I was in one of their driveways last Wednesday. I was about to get out of my car and end that kid. And I don't mean politely. I mean end that kid. Okay. Thankfully, I pulled back. Thankfully, I realized if we just give them the opportunity to do better, the ones that will, and the ones that won't will be handled by the system if we engage with the system the right way. If we don't Facebook rumor mill, if we see something, we report it to them, not to the internet where it gets blown out of proportion and they spend 12 hours chasing down BS because the internet is BS. That's just my 2 cents. Sorry, guys.
There's someone that had their hand up on the computer, Mia Schultz.
Hi. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Mia Schultz. I'm the president of the Rutland area NAACP, and I was asked to come and join this meeting today because, quite frankly, I've heard about the racism aspect of this, and I appreciate what the last couple of people have been saying about other ways besides punitive measures. I just wanted to, with my kind of lens and the expertise that I have in the arena of racism and discrimination, that when we're discussing racism and its impact on its cognitive development, it's really, really essential to examine the role of how values shape and our attitudes and behaviors. And, this is not information that is like just, a person, a talking head that's saying this. This is backed by data from places like the American Psychological Association. It reveals that children who face persistent racial harassment are at a higher risk of developing aggression and engaging in violent behaviors as a coping mechanism. And as a person who sometimes gets called to handle situations in your community, albeit private, I know that this community is not void of racism and our children take the highest impact. And so as you're thinking about solutions, as you're thinking about your values, I am imploring you to listen to Alex, listen to the man whose family is part of this conversation, whose family has been impacted by this situation. and look at this from a 360-degree lens and understand that these kids, that they may have something deeper going on that they're having to face at school as well. They may not be safe at school either. From what I understand, they are not. Racial violence is just, the violence that they're exhibiting is just from the response from the racial violence they experience every single day. Let's not put it under the rug and act like it's not there. We really need anti-racism embedded in all of these programs so that we can really promote equity and inclusion. And I'm going to tell you, your community will be better for it. So I love the way that the last couple of speakers have been really encouraging a holistic point of view to this. And when we center values, let's also center equity. Let's center the absence of hate because of how you show up in the world. And so I know that this community can do better. I've heard it here in this room tonight. And so that's all I'm here to kind of emphasize. You have some people here who have great ideas. Thank you for giving me some space tonight in your meeting.
Thank you.
I think we're limited to like 3 more questions. I know Samantha's in the back at Megan. So is your hand up, Medrick? Maybe Samantha, yours. We'll go to like 3 more people. And then I know this is up for more discussion, but I don't know if you had another meeting set up. Did you guys set up another meeting for your
We
group?
were coming to you all to ask for these things, and then from there, we were going to set up a meeting. So we didn't know what we were able to do and what the select board was willing to let us do.
I don't know if anyone can hear me.
I can't hear you.
I just, this meeting started off really disheartening for me. We're talking about punishing kids. We're talking about these like reactive measures. And I'm just so glad that it seems as if the tide has turned in the discussion here, because reactive measures and punitive measures are at best a stopgap measure, and at the end of the day, you just need to do better. And I've heard people say, well, it's for Terry to fix, it's for the sheriff's office to fix it. It's not, and it's for us to fix, and that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, is it's for us to fix. And I hear we need leaders in town that are going to help. We have leaders. We have Tim, who has already talked about some of the work that he's done. We have Terry, who hasn't said a word, but he has been an incredible force in my own child's life. And we have so many others. So I'm so glad to hear that the discussion around this is not about how we punish these children, who again are hurting. I mean, I heard you talk about that program over in Rutland. I work with those kids. I see them every other week. And I
made friends out of those kids.
And I
after the age out.
the impact of the work that I do, and I know the impact of the work that other people do, and I know the impact of the work that you do with them too. It's life changing to meet these kids as kids. For them, it is life changing to recognize that everyone is doing the best that they can with what they have available to them at the time. And sometimes that best looks really, really bad. But the truth of the matter is they are still developing. They're going to be developing until they're into their 20s. We can't just mark them for life as a bad kid, because they're not. They are doing bad things because they don't know what else to do. So I'm not on Facebook because Facebook is a cesspool. It's the worst of all of us. It's where all of our worst impulses go, and I won't be part of it. But I do want to be part of this. There's things that I can do. There are things that others can do. There are things that every one of us can do to make this a little bit better for our kids, including the bad kids, because they're not bad. They will be if we keep marking them.
Medrick and Terry. You want to go first, and then Terry will ask. Medrick, you want to go, then Terry?
It's actually a question. I mean, I'm not a Facebook person either, but when all this stuff started, I started reading it because of what everybody was saying. I thought it was kind of funny because, people talking about stuff that they really didn't know about. I understand the fact that I know you guys' hands are tied. You can do all you want, and our state's attorney lets them go. That's not gonna get fixed until we start voting different people in. But I think with the Facebook, once all that started, with them being in the road, once people started complaining about that, things just kept growing. And it kept getting better and bigger, and hey, look, now we're on. Won't be able to watch for this. Let's see if we can do this. I think that's probably what created this whole mess. And you're right, they leave them alone, they'll probably go away. I got a question now. I've read pretty much every comment on Poultney Neighborhood Watch. When did the racist card come into this?
Today. I think their dad's white.
Up until right now, I've never heard of anything being racist or against those kids because of black, white, green, yellow, orange. I have never, ever been prejudiced for anything.
I think that's where the misconception is.
I don't want to know who started, like I said, I
think there's a lot of.
Nobody said anything about anybody being any color.
Hey, so
Or
heard that either.
when it came up, this is what I'm saying, it's the first night it came up, right?
Absolutely.
That's all I wanted to bring it up. That's all I'm saying.
And I will say that the kids that are involved here
That's not going to happen.
color. They
Exactly.
come from a very broken home. And the best way they know how to deal with things is to beat up other kids.
Yeah, but
This came from a brother who was sleeping with a girl out behind my house, who set his younger brother up to go out and assault these kids. Nothing is being done with that. And you're absolutely right. They're not bad kids. They're bad parents.
Okay.
And nothing happens with the parents. This was raised last summer. These kids riding in the road. Nothing got done. Parents did nothing. If it doesn't start with the parents, the kids are going to continue to do what they do because there is no consequences. I can tell you for one, my nephew, I caught him vaping. He was grounded for a month.
You can't force people to parent though. So what's the next step?
You can't.
Force them.
Somebody telling the kids riding in the road, and then they go on the sidewalk, and then I get phone calls that they're riding on the sidewalk. Where are they supposed to ride?
You're absolutely right, Debbie. And that's the point that I'm trying to make is we can have conversations with these kids and some of them will be able to turn. How many of us have said, hey, let's take them and teach them the rules for riding a bike. And then if they don't follow it, where are the consequences? But we do have to come together and do this. And I have to tell you, I feel very bad for the school system because the school has done nothing but good stuff for Jordan. And they are there to defend him. But I cannot imagine trying to run a school with the way the things are going in that school. I, for one, I watch my back when I walk out of the house in the morning at 6 o'clock. I'm afraid I'm going to get shot.
On Church Street?
Yes.
By whom?
By whoever has these guns.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming too, though, but I do want to give Terry with, because we still have a little bit of an agenda. I want to give Terry the last word before we go.
I'm Terry, I'm your senator. And I guess I talked to our legislative council today because I'm brand new and I really don't know the ropes up in Montpelier. But I'm going to tell you what we do in Montpelier is we set policy. Okay, the policy becomes a bill. It goes into the governor's office from the House and the Senate. It's signed or it's vetoed. We can't do anything up there unless our constituency tells us to. So what I can do is if you want me to write a bill that takes care of some of this, let me know what it is. I'll write the bill. I guarantee it. And Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, if this is a crisis, and from what I'm hearing tonight, we got all the ingredients to bake the cake here. And we need the people because we need this whole village and town to pull together.
Question?
Yep.
In conjunction with that,
Yep.
instead of us writing letters, what if we got petitions and got the petitions out there, not only from Poultney, Castleton, Fairhaven, and presented them to you saying we want these laws.
Well, it has to go through it's got to be a grassroots.
Right.
The state of Vermont isn't going to fix your problems for you.
But if I could just send individual letters to you, would it be better if the petitions were given to you?
I'll give you my card. You can call me. Tell me what you want. I've already got
Okay.
3 or 4 of people that want me to write bills for them. I've been talking to, I'm on the education committee. I'm on the health and welfare committee, and everything that we're doing here has to do with my 2 committees. But I can't do anything alone. And these guys can't do anything because their hands are tied. So Title 20 is public safety. And the state is responsible for providing public safety, which means the Department of Public Safety is supposed to do more than they're doing. And when you talk to them about it, well, we're short people. State of Vermont, we're down 200 employees. We can't find qualified people. And who wants to be a cop today? I mean, why would anybody want to be put out there and get hammered on or get shot at? So we need to fix it at the grow. I'm trying not to let my opinion get involved in this, but I live here and I was brought up here. So I care deeply for Poultney. I love the place. I love the people, even though I don't know most of them anymore. But, so I guess my message will be, I don't know the gentleman, Nick, I guess, that said it was my place to fix it. I will be a part of the solution, but everybody in here needs to also be a part of it.
That's right.
And peer pressure, believe it or not, what this gentleman said was happening in his store. You take these kids under your arm. I had a tough upbringing myself. Once you find one individual, an adult that believes in you, and you tell them that, you know what, I hear what you're doing, but it's not right, and they come back the 3rd time, guess what? Then they tell their buddy, no, we don't steal from this guy. That's huge. So I'm not going to get opinion. I will answer any questions. I'm pretty limited to what I can do up there, but I'm working for you every day. Believe me.
How do we reach out to you and get a hold of you to participate?
I'll give you my card.
Yeah.
I think, thank you all for coming and voicing. I think it's a really good start. I think we have an idea of listening to the law enforcement, also getting everyone's opinions on some of the things that we need to do. I think forming some committees and some other things are a great start, like the group that just met. So I know that we'll talk about it as a select board, we'll talk about it. And I would hope that even with Joe DeBonis, who would reach out for the high school, and I think it starts small and get 1 or 2 things that you think might work, a mentoring program, those things, work from there to start with it and see. I don't think it's something we can get like 1,500 ideas. I think if you got to start small and get a couple groups out there that are going to work. People say they want to do it, and I know from experience, and they say it, and they might write their name down, but when they come to show up, they don't always show up. And if it goes away, then no one will show up. I hate to say that. I've been here a long time, and that's what happens. You can do it back. But I think if you start small, like Tim, and you have a couple of meetings, you say, what can we do? Can we start a mentoring program? I think that's wonderful. Start that. That's a good start. And then from there, maybe you branch out to something else and get some support going. But I would start small and do a couple groups and then see how it goes. And then we can build on that. But I think that's a good start. So listening to everybody, I'm happy that everyone was here. And I think we made some good ground. I want to thank the law enforcement. And
if you want me involved with the grassroots activities, let me know. I'll be there.
And is Joe still here? Joe, are you still here? Honest? Oh yeah, and Joe's still here, so feel free to reach out to Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's the Shannon. We're not really. We'll
You did say you came to the road report.
Yeah, that's what I came for too. Funny.
That's right.
No, I walked in blind for this because I'm not on any social media. So well, you guys handled it well. I mean, just
Good to see people kind of stick together and set up.
yeah, it'll turn into an arms race. Yes, and you know it's pig wrestling. You know, pig like you can't beat into that side of folks and let them to do. I don't mean to call anybody a pig. I'm just using the turn of phrase. Like it's very close. Anybody brought this family a casserole? Yeah, well, has anybody brought this family a casserole? Like cookies? Hey guys, we're the neighbors. And we're watching it. Like,
I see you walk every morning. Okay, road report. Joel, you're up.
Short and sweet. We have added material to the following roads since the last meeting. Endless Brook Road, we've added material and graded in chloride. Endless Brook Road, Evergreen Road, Pond Hill Ranch Road, New Boston Road, and East Road. Some of those roads I did, some of those roads Kevin did, some of those roads, one of those roads Andy did. I've got the whole crew working on getting in the grader so that we can be kind of universal in all of our equipment. And also since the last time, the other big thing we've done is we've started working on Bird's Eye Road over kind of landlocked and Castleton, but it hasn't really, it was much needed, much overdue for a good cleanup and dress up, and it's getting it, and hopefully that should really satisfy it for the next 5-10 years.
From the cemetery off the temple there.
We're from the turnaround there. So there should be a 911 sign that says Castleton Poultney, and there's not for some reason. I know that we bought the last one last year because I put it up with one of the other guys last year at the other Castleton Poultney border. So I'll get a hold of Castleton's foreman and see if maybe they want to buy this one, just so it's known. But it's really not traveled. It's a dead end, and it turns into Ames Hollow, which is a trail. And it's actually got a sign that says no unauthorized vehicles beyond this point. Nobody, and even with the state, nobody really seems to know what an authorized vehicle is other than emergency vehicle.
What class is Bird's Eye?
Class 4.
It is a class 4.
Yeah. And then it turns into a trail after the signage.
Kennedy over to Tribble, we have a section on Castleton that has speed, yeah. Are there barriers up there?
There is.
Okay.
There's barriers where it goes from class 4 to a trail.
Yes. Okay. It's a big rock. That's the barrier. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, there's a half block, like one of those waste blocks with a sign on it. Yeah, so we're doing that. We're hoping to finish that up by this Thursday. We've added that stony material to the roads. It doesn't have a lot of fines in it. We've had a problem getting gravel, so I'm gonna talk to the guy that we typically get our gravel from. We try to stay with him because it's good stuff. The price is right and it's local. If we go further out, we're looking at a higher price of the product per yard for one. The hauling is further, so we get less and it takes more time. There's multiple reasons, but I will find out. And the intention is for these rocky roads where people are having troubles with motorcycles. I get it. I have a motorcycle endorsement. I rode for 20 years. You can't really do much in stone. I understand that. When we get to gravel, I will get it applied. We're going to top dress. We'll top dress the crushed. I'm drawing a blank. I'm getting foggy now, but yeah, anyways, we're going to top dress the road with some gravel and we'll get it a little bit smoother. Other than that's basically summed up since our last meeting. Any big things? So if anybody's got any questions, comments, concerns, I'm open to that. Yes.
On Hampshire Road today.
Who's mowing? What did you see?
Child tractor.
It's got to be Ron. Yeah.
Yes, Hampshire Highway, the state's doing 140 and 30, right?
Last I knew, his tractor was down He did send me a message that, yeah.
I thought he was only doing it for tables.
I don't know. I'll have to talk to him. Because that was the agreement, is the paved roads by the 1st of July.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll reach out to him and I'll find out. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe you have a really happy neighbor.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was thinking.
I do it with my road where I live.
I don't really know. Say what color?
What color was it?
Yeah, that's what I thought was wrong. It was really, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think it had an arm on it. Yeah, he only did one pass.
Just a thing that stuck off the back of the tractor and went over. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Ron? Anybody? I'm sorry, Joe. Ron. It's Joe. Sorry, we're talking about Ron. Joe. Good job. Tell the boys, good job. And want to skip to Sarah? For Sarah, it's mine on the agenda.
I didn't think so.
Oh, I thought you were here from the agenda. Is the RFPC on the agenda?
Yeah.
So is that next?
I'll put you next. Go ahead.
Okay. So actually I do have a question about this. So I'm acting as Poultney's regional, delegate to the regional commission. And I'm not quite sure.
People in the back, can you please vacate the building?
Yeah.
They're doing karate moves.
Trying to go home. Trying to go home. Yeah. Here we go. So my question is, how this agenda item has been used in the past for the select board.
The RFPC?
Yeah. So I think Terry was the delegate prior to being elected. And I don't know if you reported out to the select board. I can use it that way if you want me to, but if you're previously using it in a different way, let me know.
No, that's how he was using it.
Okay. So the biggest item on the agenda for the regional commission at the next meeting, which I think is next Tuesday, is the RRPC annual budget. So that is what we will be talking about. I haven't had a chance to review it. I don't know that I would have a lot of background to actually add a lot to the commentary for that, but that's what's on the agenda. And then, of course, the RPC is helping us with the Town of Trails project, which is the community meeting that's taking place on Friday at the high school. I thought about mentioning it earlier, but it didn't seem like the right time.
Is it on the website?
That is, it is. I don't know if we have it on the website. We've done posters, we've done outreach on social media, we've done personal invites, and the format of the meeting is set up for 4 different categories. There's arts and culture, there's they're escaping me, but there's education, there's community, and so the meeting is set up so that nonprofits and organizations in Poultney have been invited to speak, to talk about what their organizations have been doing over the past couple of years since Poultney comes together. So we will have speakers from the folks that I've heard from so far are Rotary, Stone Valley Arts, Lake St. Catherine Association. I'm missing a few.
This is like the same one that was
the
in
library.
It's similar.
It's a follow-up from that meeting, and then with the intent also to get additional feedback on the conceptual designs from the Town to Trails project, which we've been working on for a year and a half. So that's what's happening on Friday. Hopefully, the select board members can attend if you're available.
What time is it Friday?
It starts at 6:30. 6:30 to 8.
Friday at 6:30.
At the high school.
At the high school.
Any questions for Sarah? Everyone's good? Okay, Paul?
I have nothing further to add.
Sorry.
No town report or anything?
No, I knew that the last discussion was going to take up most of the activities. So.
No executive session tonight.
No.
Do we have a motion to accept the board orders?
Yes. I would make the motion to accept the board order. I'll second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Orders accepted. I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I have a public comment.
Oh, are you on that? I guess we just had public comment. An hour.
Well, I know I sent, something to Paul about it, but there's actually an open meetings, law seminar. I believe it's tomorrow night, that the state is putting on. And, I think it would be really good for people to get like a refresher on that, including me. I think it's really good even for the public to go to these open meeting laws just to get a good understanding of them. So just thought I'd throw that out at you folks.
So it's a meeting about how open meeting laws
Works in Vermont. I got you. What's how they work. So.
They do record some of them. I think that was recorded. I just know I had graduation.
That one's being presented by the Regional Planning Commission as well. So
Is it? Okay.
yeah, if someone wants it, you could find it on their website.
Okay. I just had graduation, so I did ask about it.
Okay.
Okay, anybody motion to adjourn? Adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Second by Mark. All those in favor? Opposed?